Hey there. Good evening. Wherever you're listening from, whether it's a quiet room in the countryside or a cozy apartment in the city, tonight, we'll take a gentle journey into a forgotten corner of history. Together, we'll uncover the quiet, hidden world of the medieval leper colonies, places once feared, now almost entirely forgotten, where time moved like honey through stone corridors and every whispered prayer echoed against ancient walls. If you enjoy drifting through soft stories from history like this one, don't forget to tap the like button or subscribe. It helps these quiet tales reach other wandering minds seeking rest. It always amazes me how many of you are listening from different parts of the world, from bustling cities to remote countryside, all gathering here in this peaceful moment. And I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from tonight? Drop a comment and let me know what corner of the world you're settling into sleep from. Now find that cozy spot, let your body sink into the mattress. Feel the weight of the day slowly lifting from your shoulders. Take a slow breath, let your shoulders fall. Notice how your breathing naturally deepens as we prepare to step back through time. Nothing to worry about now, just this calm moment, and a story from long ago, a story of quiet endurance, forgotten voices, and the gentle rhythm of life lived in the margins of history. You blink awake on a coarse straw mattress. The rough fibers prickle softly against your skin, but there's warmth here, unexpected comfort. The air is damp, filled with the scent of smoke and something medicinal. Herbs hanging from wooden beams above, lavender, rosemary, sage, their earthy perfume mixing with the distant smell of baking bread. You hear distant chanting, low and rhythmic, like a lullaby hummed by ancient voices. The hollow sound of church bells echoes through fog, marking the hours in a world where time moves differently. You're in the 12th century, just outside the city walls of a medieval European town. The stone walls rise like sleeping giants in the mist, protecting those within while keeping others at a gentle distance. You've been brought here, not as a visitor, but as someone who's been cast out, to live among others with the same affliction. Yet there's no despair in this exile, only a strange, unexpected peace. Tonight, you are one of the forgotten. A soul inside a leper house, a place of quiet exile, where the world moves slowly, and every footstep echoes through history. Where humanity endures in the softest whispers and the gentlest touch of sunlight through narrow windows. In the soft shadows of medieval Europe, there existed a word that could change a life forever: leprosis. But tonight, as we settle into this ancient story, we won't dwell on fear or horror. Instead, we'll discover something unexpected: the quiet dignity of those who lived beyond the city walls, in places called lazar houses, where time flowed like a gentle river, and each day brought its own small mercies. Leprosy, known today as Hansen's disease, was poorly understood in medieval times. People believed it was divine punishment, a test of faith, or sometimes even a strange blessing, a way to suffer as Christ had suffered. The truth was simpler and sadder. It was simply an illness, one that affected the skin and nerves, progressing slowly, quietly, over many years. Picture this: a morning in 1180, somewhere in France or England. Mist clings to cobblestone streets as merchants set up their stalls. But outside the town walls, past the last houses, down a winding path lined with ancient oaks, stands a collection of low stone buildings. Smoke rises gently from their chimneys. Gardens bloom with healing herbs. This is a leper colony, a leprosarium, and it hums with the quiet rhythm of a different kind of life. These weren't places of despair, though the world often painted them so. They were communities. Small societies where people who had been cast out found each other, where former nobles and peasants shared the same simple meals, where skilled craftsmen continued their work with adapted tools, where voices rose together in evening prayers that drifted across empty fields like birdsong. The wooden doors of these places were thick and weathered, marked with simple crosses. Cold stone walls held warmth within. Silent courtyards echoed with soft footsteps and whispered conversations. Distant church bells marked the hours, not with urgency, but with the gentle persistence of time itself, flowing endlessly forward. Tonight, we'll walk these forgotten corridors together. We'll sit by fires where stories were shared. We'll tend gardens where healing herbs grew in careful rows. We'll listen to the soft chime of bells that announce not doom, but simply presence. I am here, I exist, I matter. This isn't a tale of horror, but of quiet endurance. Of forgotten humanity finding ways to bloom even in exile. Of communities formed not by choice but by circumstance, yet bound together by something deeper than law or fear. by the simple human need for connection, for purpose, for the gentle comfort of not being alone. We'll follow stories of real places and real people across centuries. The carpenter who carved delicate crosses with hands that trembled. The former noblewoman who tended the sick with infinite patience. The priest who brought not judgment but genuine comfort. The children who played quiet games in herb-scented gardens. As we begin this journey, let yourself drift. Let the weight of modern worries fall away. And step gently into a world where time moved like honey, where every moment was precious precisely because it was all they had, and where the human spirit found ways to shine even in the deepest shadows of history. The wooden gate creaks, and the bell tied around your neck chimes softly. The sound is surprisingly gentle, not the harsh clang you might expect, but a soft, melodic whisper that seems to blend with the evening air. This small brass bell, no larger than your palm, hangs from a leather cord around your neck, and with each step, each breath, each movement of your body, it announces your presence to the world. You stand before the gate of St. Bartholomew's Lazar house, its oak planks darkened by decades of rain and sun. The wood is carved with simple crosses, worn smooth by countless hands that have pressed against it in prayer, in desperation, in resignation. Above the gate, barely visible in the gathering dusk, you can make out the faded outline of a painted saint. Perhaps Saint Lazarus himself, patron of lepers, his own wounds visible even in the weathered pigment. The bell around your neck was not given to you in cruelty, though it may have felt so at first. It is the law, yes. The Fourth Lateran Council declared that lepers must announce themselves with bells or wooden clappers. But here, in this moment, as evening settles over the countryside, the sound seems less like a warning and more like a gentle hymn. Your robes are new, made of undyed wool that scratches slightly against your skin. They smell of sheep and rain and something else. Perhaps the careful hands of the sister who stitched them, who said a quiet prayer over each seam. The fabric is coarse but warm, and the hood drawn over your head shields you from both the cooling air and the curious glances of those within the colony walls. Through the gaps in the gate, you catch glimpses of the courtyard beyond. Smooth flagstones worn by bare feet and wooden clogs. A well in the center, its rope bucket hanging motionless. Garden plots where even now, in the fading light, you can see the silvery leaves of lamb's ear and the dark green spears of rosemary pushing through the earth. There are figures moving in the shadows, other residents going about their evening routines. One passes close enough to the gate that you hear the soft shuffle of sandals, the whisper of robes, and yes, the gentle chime of another bell, its tone slightly different from your own. The sound is oddly comforting, like a musical conversation between strangers who share an unspoken understanding. A hand appears at the gate's viewing slot, weathered, with fingers that have known work, but gentle in their movement. The face that follows is kind, marked by time and illness, yes, but alive with intelligence and something that might be called peace. This is Brother Thomas, the gatekeeper, who has held this post for 7 years and who greets each new arrival not with pity, but with dignity. "Welcome, friend," he says, his voice soft but clear. "The bell that calls you here calls you home." The gate swings open with that same gentle creak, and your bell chimes once more as you step across the threshold into your new world. Behind you, the familiar life you once knew grows smaller with each step. Ahead, lit by the warm glow of oil lamps placed in wall niches, stretches a corridor that will become as familiar as your own breathing. Other bells join yours now, a quiet symphony of arrival and acceptance. Somewhere in the distance, a chapel bell tolls the hour, its deep bronze voice carrying over the colony like a benediction. Your footsteps echo softly on the stone, each sound absorbed by walls that have heard countless stories, countless prayers, countless whispered hopes. As Brother Thomas leads you deeper into the Lazar house, past doorways where candlelight flickers and shadows dance, you realize that the bell around your neck no longer feels like a burden. Instead, it has become part of you, a small voice that says, "I am here. I endure. I belong." And in the gentle echo of bells that follows you down the corridor, you hear the first notes of a lullaby that will sing you to sleep for years to come. As dawn breaks over the colony walls, the soft shuffle of feet on stone begins the day's gentle rhythm. The bell for lauds rings while the sky is still more gray than gold, its bronze voice calling the community to prayer with the same certainty that has marked each dawn for generations. You wake slowly on your straw mattress, covered by a wool blanket that smells of lavender, a small kindness from the sisters who tend the linen stores. Around you, in the long dormitory hall, other figures stir quietly, each beginning the day's rituals with the practiced grace of those who have learned to find beauty in routine. Your feet touch the cold stone floor, and immediately the small bell at your neck chimes softly. It's a sound you've grown accustomed to, no longer jarring, but somehow reassuring, like the ticking of a clock that measures not just time, but presence, continuity, the simple fact of being alive in this moment. The washing basin near your bed holds water that Sister Margaret filled the night before. It's cold, but not unpleasantly so, and as you splash it on your face and hands, you catch the faint scent of rose petals that have been steeped in the water. These small luxuries are not accidents. They are deliberate acts of grace, reminders that even here, at the margins of the world, beauty persists. Dressing is a quiet affair. Your robes, now softened by weeks of wear, slip over your head with familiar ease. The belt that holds them, a simple rope cord, was blessed by Father Benedict when you first arrived, and though the blessing is invisible, you feel its weight each morning as you tie the knots. Over your head goes the hood, pulled forward just enough to provide privacy without hiding your face entirely from your fellow residents. The walk to the chapel is a procession of bells, soft chimes that create an unintentional melody as 30 souls make their way down the stone corridor. The chapel itself is small, built for intimacy rather than grandeur, with walls of honey-colored stone that seem to glow in the lamplight. The altar is simple, a wooden table covered with white linen, upon which sits a brass crucifix and 2 beeswax candles whose flames never waver in the still air. Brother Francis leads the prayers, his voice weathered but strong, carrying the Latin phrases that have been spoken here each morning for more than a century. Domini labia mea aperis, Lord, open my lips. And in response, 30 voices whisper back, Etios meum annunciabit laudem tuum, and my mouth shall proclaim your praise. The words wash over you like water, their meaning less important than their rhythm, their constancy, their reminder that you are part of something larger than your individual suffering. In the chapel's dim light, you can see faces around you, some marked by disease, yes, but all marked more deeply by acceptance, by a kind of peace that the outside world rarely achieves. After prayers comes the morning meal, taken in the refectory where long wooden tables bear simple fare that is nevertheless prepared with care. Today there is dark bread, still warm from the ovens, spread with honey from the colony's own hives. There is milk from the goats that graze in the field beyond the herb garden, and porridge sweetened with dried apples that were harvested last autumn and carefully preserved through the winter. The meal is eaten largely in silence, not from any rule of stricture, but from habit, from the understanding that the early morning hours are precious and fragile, not to be broken by unnecessary chatter. Occasionally, someone will lean over to pass the salt, or to help an elderly resident whose hands shake too much to hold a cup steady. These small acts of service happen without fanfare, as natural as breathing. After breakfast, the day's work begins. There are gardens to tend, meals to prepare, prayers to copy in the scriptorium, medicines to compound in the infirmary. Everyone contributes according to their ability, and there is no shame in having limitations, only acceptance and the quiet satisfaction of doing what one can. You find yourself assigned to the herb garden today, working alongside Sister Catherine, whose knowledge of healing plants is legendary throughout the region. She shows you how to deadhead the marigolds to encourage new blooms, how to harvest the lavender at just the right moment when the oils are strongest, how to tie bundles of thyme and sage to dry in the storage shed. The work is meditative, your hands moving in earth that has been tended by hundreds before you. The sun climbs higher, warming your back through the wool of your robes, and your bell chimes softly with each movement, planting, weeding, watering. The sound becomes part of the garden's symphony, joined by the buzzing of bees, the distant lowing of cattle, the splash of water from the fountain in the courtyard. As the morning progresses toward midday, you realize that something unexpected has happened. For the first time since your arrival, you have forgotten to think about what you've lost. Instead, you are fully present in this moment, hands in soil, sun on shoulders, the gentle music of bells creating a rhythm that speaks not of exile, but of belonging. And as the chapel bell chimes the hour of sext, calling the community to midday prayer, you understand that life on the margins can still be life fully lived. In the rustling of leaves, another day passes. The garden exists in its own pocket of time, where seasons matter more than hours, and the passage of days is marked not by bells or prayers, but by the slow unfurling of petals, the gradual darkening of berries, the patient accumulation of wisdom in root and stem and leaf. You enter through an arched doorway in the cloister wall, worn smooth by centuries of hands trailing along its stones. The heavy wooden door, painted green long ago but now weathered to the color of sage, creaks open on iron hinges that have learned to whisper rather than groan. The garden beyond is laid out in the traditional manner. 4 square plots divided by narrow gravel paths, with a fountain at the center where clear water bubbles up from some hidden spring deep in the earth. But this is no ornamental space designed for beauty alone. This is a working garden, where every plant serves a purpose, where beauty and utility intertwine like the climbing roses that embrace the arbor near the far wall. Sister Catherine moves through the garden with the fluid grace of someone who has spent decades learning its rhythms. Her bell chimes softly as she bends to examine a plant, straightens to adjust a trellis, kneels to pull a weed that threatens to crowd out a delicate seedling. She is your teacher here, though she has never claimed that title. Instead, she simply works, and you work beside her, learning through observation, through the patient repetition of tasks that connect you to the earth and to the centuries of gardeners who have tended this same soil. Lavender, she says, her voice barely above a whisper as she brushes her fingers across the silvery spikes of a mature plant. For the nerves, for headaches, for the restless sleep that comes with worry. But also, she brings her fingers to her nose, inhaling deeply before offering them to you. The scent is immediate and transformative, sharp yet soothing, familiar yet mysterious, carrying within it the essence of summer afternoons and peaceful dreams. Also for remembering, she continues, settling back on her heels, her weathered hands resting gently on her knees. When the mind grows confused, when memories slip away like water through fingers, lavender calls them back. We make pillows filled with the dried flowers for those who struggle to hold on to themselves. You kneel beside her, your own bell creating a gentle harmony with hers as you lean forward to touch the plant. The leaves are soft, almost furry beneath your fingertips, and they release their fragrance generously at your touch. Around you, the garden hums with life, bees moving drunkenly from flower to flower, their legs heavy with pollen, their wings catching the morning light like stained glass. The first quadrant of the garden is devoted to what Sister Catherine calls the comforting herbs. Plants that ease pain, promote sleep, calm troubled spirits. Here grows chamomile, its tiny white and yellow flowers resembling fallen stars scattered across the dark earth. The scent rises up as you brush against it, sweet and apple-like, carrying with it the promise of restful nights and peaceful mornings. Brother Marcus couldn't sleep for weeks after he arrived, Sister Catherine tells you, her hands never still as she deadheads spent blooms and gathers the perfect flowers into her wicker basket. The shame was eating at him, you see. He kept thinking about his children, wondering if they remembered him, if they understood why he couldn't come home. We made him chamomile tea every evening, and slowly, so slowly, the sleep came back. And with the sleep, the peace. Beside the chamomile grows valerian, its tall stems topped with clusters of small white flowers that seem almost ethereal in the morning mist. The root, Sister Catherine explains, is what they use, dried and ground into powder, mixed with wine or water for those whose minds race too fast for rest. The plant itself looks innocent enough, but there's something ancient about it, something that speaks of old knowledge and older remedies. You move together to the second quadrant, where the healing herbs grow in neat labeled rows. Here is comfrey, called knit bone by the common folk, its broad leaves dark green and slightly rough to the touch. Sister Catherine shows you how to identify it properly. The leaves alternate along the stem, the small bell-shaped flowers hang in clusters, and when you crush a leaf between your fingers, it releases a mucilaginous sap that speaks to its healing properties. For wounds that won't close, she says simply, but her voice carries the weight of experience. We make poultices from the fresh leaves, salves from the dried. It won't cure what we carry, but it helps the body remember how to heal itself. The yarrow nearby stands tall and proud, its feathery leaves divided into countless tiny segments, its flat-topped flower clusters white as fresh snow. Achilles' herb, Sister Catherine murmurs, invoking the ancient name. For bleeding, for fever, for the courage to face what must be faced. We dry the leaves and flowers together, brew them strong when the need is great. Your fingers trail through the artemisia, wormwood, mugwort, southernwood, plants with silvery leaves and bitter scents that speak of protection and purification. These are the herbs that guard against corruption, that cleanse not just the body but the spirit. Sister Catherine explains how they burn dried wormwood in the sick room when someone is dying, how the smoke carries prayers upward and eases the soul's passage from one world to the next. The third quadrant holds the culinary herbs, plants that transform simple food into nourishment for body and soul. Here grows rosemary, its needle-like leaves dark green and glossy, releasing their piney fragrance at the slightest touch. For remembrance, Sister Catherine says, echoing the old tradition, but also for the heart, for circulation, for keeping the mind clear and present. The thyme spreads in low, cushioned mounds, its tiny leaves hiding small purple flowers that the bees adore. When you kneel to examine it more closely, brushing your hands across its surface, the scent that rises is warm and earthy, speaking of hearth fires and savory stews that fill the belly and comfort the soul. Sage grows in silvery green clumps, its leaves soft and slightly furry, carrying within them the wisdom of ages. Sacred herb, Sister Catherine whispers, using the plant's oldest name. Purification, for wisdom, for the preservation of memory. We burn it when someone dies, and we use it in the kitchen to make even the simplest meal taste of home. Near the fountain, where the soil stays consistently moist, grow the water-loving herbs. Watercress sends up its sharp-flavored leaves, rich with the minerals that keep scurvy at bay during the long winter months. Mint spreads enthusiastically despite Sister Catherine's attempts to contain it, its leaves releasing cool, refreshing scents that promise relief from summer heat and digestive troubles. The fourth quadrant is perhaps the most mysterious. Here grow the plants that Sister Catherine simply calls the helpers. Angelica stands tall and stately, its hollow stems thick as a child's thumb, its umbrella-shaped flower clusters reaching toward the sky. Against the pestilence, she explains quietly, and for the courage to face dark times. We candy the stems at Christmas, and their sweetness carries us through the darkest days of winter. Lady's mantle spreads its pleated leaves like tiny umbrellas, each one designed to catch and hold the morning dew. Sister Catherine shows you how the water beads on the leaves, perfect spheres that catch the light like crystals. Venus's herb, she says with a small smile. For women's troubles, for the cycles of life that men don't understand. We collect the dew at dawn, when it holds the most power. As the morning progresses, you find yourself moving through the garden in a kind of meditation, your bell creating a gentle rhythm that harmonizes with Sister Catherine's, with the splash of the fountain, with the drowsy hum of bees and the distant sound of others going about their daily work. Your hands learn the feel of different leaves, the velvet softness of lamb's ear, the waxy smoothness of bay, the delicate texture of lemon balm that releases its citrusy scent at the slightest pressure. You help harvest calendula petals, their orange and yellow flowers bright as small suns, dropping them into a basket where they'll be dried for salves and tinctures. The petals feel like silk between your fingers, and their scent is green and slightly peppery, promising healing for cuts and burns and the various wounds that flesh is heir to. In the shade of the arbor, where climbing roses intertwine with honeysuckle, Sister Catherine shows you the more delicate plants, the ones that require protection from the harsh afternoon sun. Here grows sweet woodruff, its star-shaped leaves arranged in whorls around the stem, its tiny white flowers almost hidden among the foliage. When dried, she explains, it smells of new-mown hay and vanilla, and they use it to scent the chapel during May celebrations. Near the wall, where the morning sun lingers longest, stands an impressive collection of alums, the healing bulbs that most people know only as food. But Sister Catherine sees deeper purposes in these humble plants. The onions, with their papery skins and sharp scents, are allies against infection and inflammation. The garlic, pungent and powerful, guards against corruption of both body and spirit. As the sun climbs higher and the chapel bell calls the community to midday prayer, you and Sister Catherine begin gathering your harvest. Baskets filled with fresh herbs for the kitchen, bundles of plants to be dried for medicines, armfuls of flowers that will become oils and salves and tinctures. The work is satisfying in a way that goes beyond mere accomplishment. It connects you to something larger than yourself, to the endless cycle of growth and harvest and renewal that has sustained human life since the beginning of time. Your hands are stained green now, fragrant with the oils of a dozen different plants. Your robes carry the scents of lavender and rosemary, thyme and mint, creating a natural perfume that will linger long after you've returned to the dormitory. Your bell chimes softly as you walk, but the sound seems different now, less like a mark of separation, and more like a note in the garden's ongoing symphony. As you help Sister Catherine carry the baskets back toward the kitchen, you pause for a moment to look back at the garden. In the afternoon light, it seems almost to glow, the silver leaves of artemisia catching the sun, the purple spikes of lavender nodding in the gentle breeze, the white flowers of yarrow standing like small sentinels among their feathery foliage. This is a place of healing. You realize not the dramatic, miraculous healing of biblical stories, but the quiet, patient healing that comes from connection to the earth, from useful work, from the understanding that even in exile, even in suffering, there is still beauty to be tended, still wisdom to be gathered, still hope to be cultivated row by careful row. The fountain continues its gentle song, the bees continue their ancient work, and somewhere in the distance, the chapel bell calls the community together for prayer. But here in the garden, time moves differently, marked not by human schedules, but by the eternal rhythms of seed and flower and fruit, of death and rebirth, and the endless promise of another spring. And in the rustling of leaves, another day passes, gentle as a prayer, healing as the herbs themselves. The quiet ache of separation from family. The evening light filters through the narrow window of your cell, casting long shadows across the rough wooden table where a piece of parchment lies. Waiting. Your fingers trace the edge of the paper, feeling its texture, coarse and yellowed, like so many thoughts left unspoken. The quill rests beside it, its feather soft against your palm, a gentle reminder of the world beyond these walls. You think of home, not with sharp longing, but with the soft ache of memory, the way morning light used to dance through your mother's kitchen, the sound of your father's footsteps on cobblestone, your sister's laugh echoing through familiar rooms. The ink pot sits open, its dark surface reflecting the candlelight like a small, still pond. You dip the quill, watch a single drop fall back into the darkness, and begin. My dearest family. You write, the letters forming slowly, carefully, each stroke deliberate and precious. But what words can bridge this distance? How do you speak of days that pass like whispered prayers? Of small kindnesses shared between strangers who have become family? Of finding peace in a place the world has forgotten? The parchment holds your trembling words. I am well cared for here. The gardens bloom with healing herbs. Brother Thomas plays the flute in the evenings. Simple truths, gentle reassurances. Yet beneath each line lies the weight of all you cannot say. The fear you felt that first night. How the other residents welcomed you with quiet nods and shared bread. The way sunrise looks different when viewed from exile, more precious, more golden. Your hand pauses. The candle flame flickers, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. Outside, you hear the soft footsteps of Sister Margaret making her evening rounds, her keys jingling like distant chimes. You write of small things, the cat that visits your window, the way Brother Francis hums while he tends the garden, how the rain sounds different here, softer somehow, more like music than sorrow. The quill scratches gently against the parchment, each word a small act of love, a thread connecting you to the life you once knew. You tell them about the blanket woven by Mary, how it carries the scent of lavender from the garden, how it wraps around you like an embrace. But there are things you cannot write. The way your reflection startled you at first, the gradual acceptance of your changed face, the strange freedom found in being invisible to the world, the peace that comes from having nothing left to lose. Your tears fall softly onto the parchment, blurring the ink, but somehow making the words more beautiful, more true. Each droplet a prayer, each smudge a kiss sent across the impossible distance. You fold the letter carefully, though you know it will never leave this room. Like so many others before it, it will rest in the wooden chest beside your bed, a collection of conversations with ghosts, words that carry love across an impossible void. The parchment crinkles softly as you place it with the others, each one a bridge built to nowhere, yet somehow, in the writing, the connection feels real. The love flows through your fingers, through the quill, onto the page, and perhaps it reaches them after all. In the growing darkness, surrounded by these undelivered messages, you feel not alone, but gently held by all the words you've written, all the love you've preserved in ink and intention. The candle burns lower, wax pooling like small tears, and you whisper their names into the quiet air, knowing that somewhere, in dreams, in memory, in the space between heartbeats, love finds its way. As the candle burned low, the thoughts faded, like prayers whispered into the peaceful night. The spiritual care and last rites. The chapel bell tolls softly, once, twice, 3 times. Its bronze voice drifts through the morning mist like a gentle summons, calling Father Benedict to his weekly pilgrimage to the forgotten. You hear his approach long before you see him, the rhythmic tap of his oak staff against the worn stone path, each footfall deliberate and unhurried. The soft rustle of his brown Franciscan robes whispers through the courtyard, carrying with it the scent of monastery gardens, of prayers spoken at dawn, of bread blessed by weathered hands. Through your narrow window, you watch him pause at the iron gate, his silhouette outlined against the pale morning sky, head bowed in a moment of silent preparation. Even from this distance, you can see the weight of compassion in his shoulders, the way he carries the sorrows of others like stones in his pockets. The heavy wooden door to the infirmary opens with its familiar creak, that sound you've come to know as well as your own heartbeat. And there he stands in the doorway, Father Benedict, his face lined with decades of service, eyes that have witnessed countless final moments, yet still hold the gentle warmth of someone who sees the divine spark in every suffering soul. "Peace be with you, my dear child," he says, and his voice carries no trace of fear, no hint of the revulsion that clouds the faces of those who venture here from the outside world. Instead, there's a quality to his words that feels like warm honey, like the embrace of unconditional acceptance. He moves through the room with the careful grace of someone who has walked these stone floors for 20 years. 20 years of weekly visits, of holding dying hands, of whispering final prayers into ears that strain to hear the voice of God. His leather sandals make no sound against the worn stones, as if even his footsteps have learned the language of reverence. The morning light filtering through the high windows catches the silver threads in his brown hair, creating a gentle halo around his tonsured head. He settles beside your simple wooden bed, his movements unhurried, eternal, as if time itself bends around this sacred ritual of presence. From his worn leather satchel, he withdraws the tools of his ministry, a small vial of holy oil, its glass surface catching the filtered sunlight and throwing tiny rainbows across the stone wall. The oil within glows golden, pressed from olives that grew on hills overlooking Jerusalem, blessed by bishops whose hands have touched the very altar stones of St. Peter. "Tell me, how has your spirit fared this week?" he asks, and something in his voice, in the way he leans forward with genuine interest, opens the floodgates of your heart. You find yourself speaking of things you've never shared with another soul. The dream that visits you each night, where you walk barefoot through endless fields of wheat, the golden stalks parting before you like a sea of light. You tell him about the memory that surfaced yesterday, your grandmother's hands as she kneaded bread in her sunlit kitchen. How those same hands would trace the sign of the cross on your forehead when storms frightened you as a child. And somehow, in this place of exile, you've begun to understand that her love followed you here, woven into the very fabric of your being. Father Benedict listens without judgment, without the need to fix or explain. His presence itself is a form of prayer, a living demonstration that to be truly seen, truly heard, is perhaps the greatest miracle of all. When you speak of the strange peace you've discovered within these walls, he nods with the wisdom of someone who has witnessed countless transformations. "In my Father's house are many mansions," he quotes softly, "and sometimes the rooms we fear most become the chambers where we finally learn to rest." He opens his small brass container of holy chrism, the sacred oil mixed with balsam that carries the fragrance of ancient rituals, of consecration, of souls being prepared for their journey home. The scent rises between you like incense, like the breath of something infinite and tender. With infinite gentleness, he dips his thumb into the golden oil. His touch upon your forehead is cool and blessed, tracing the sign of the cross with movements that have become second nature through thousands of such moments. "I anoint you with this holy oil," he whispers, "not for healing of the flesh, but for the strengthening of the spirit, that you may know yourself beloved of God." The oil carries with it the fragrance of olive groves, of ancient trees whose roots run deep in sacred soil. Each blessing a small promise, each prayer a bridge between this world of suffering and the realm of endless compassion. You close your eyes and feel the weight of centuries, of countless souls who have received this same touch, this same benediction. "You are not forgotten," he continues, his voice barely above a whisper. Yet each word settles into your bones with the authority of absolute truth. "You are not cast out. You are not abandoned. In the eyes of the Almighty, you are precious beyond measure. Your suffering, your exile, your very breath, all of it sacred." He reaches into his satchel again, withdrawing his breviary, the leather binding worn soft from decades of use. The pages fall open naturally to the prayers he knows by heart, prayers that have been spoken in this very room, beside countless beds, over dying and living alike, for generations beyond counting. His voice rises in the ancient cadences of Latin, Pater Nosticit Jes in Caelus. The words flow like water over stone, like honey from the comb, like the gentle rhythm of waves against a distant shore. Each syllable carries the weight of 2,000 years of prayer, the accumulated faith of millions of believers who have found comfort in these same sacred sounds. The afternoon light slants through the window, painting golden rectangles on the rough stone floor. Dust motes dance in the luminous air like tiny angels. Father Benedict's voice rises and falls in the timeless rhythm of Gregorian chant, carrying you somewhere beyond the concerns of flesh, beyond the boundaries of this small room, beyond even the walls of the leper house itself. Kyrie eleison, Christ eleison, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. The words repeat like a gentle mantra, like the beating of a heart, like breath itself. And in the repetition, you find not monotony, but depth, each recitation revealing new layers of meaning, new wells of comfort. He pauses in his reading, looks up at you with eyes that have seen too much sorrow to be anything but kind. Would you like to confess? He asks, not with the stern authority of judgment, but with the gentle invitation of a friend. Sometimes, the soul grows heavy with secrets, and speaking them aloud, even to the empty air, can lift burdens we didn't know we carried. And so you speak, haltingly at first, then with growing confidence, of the anger you felt when the diagnosis came, the rage at God, at fate, at the unfairness of a world that casts out the suffering. You speak of the shame that followed, the way you avoided mirrors, avoided the eyes of your family, avoided even your own reflection in still water. Father Benedict receives each confession like a gift, nodding with understanding, occasionally murmuring, "Yes, yes," the heart knows its own bitterness. When you finish, he raises his hand in absolution. By the mercy of God, and through the power of Christ's sacrifice, I absolve you of all sin. Go in peace, your burden is lifted, your slate wiped clean. The ritual continues with the reading of Scripture, verses chosen not for their theological complexity, but for their power to comfort, to reassure, to remind the listener of their inherent worth. Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. His voice transforms the familiar words into something new, something personal, as if Christ himself were speaking directly to you. In this moment, in this small stone room that has become a sanctuary, the walls seem to expand, to breathe, to pulse with something larger than themselves. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. The promise hangs in the air like incense, like hope made tangible, like love given form and voice. As the afternoon wears on, Father Benedict shares stories from his other visits, carefully anonymized, but rich with humanity. The cobbler who composed songs from his bed, melodies that now echo through the corridors each evening. The former merchant who discovered a gift for illuminating manuscripts, whose delicate artwork now decorates the small chapel's prayer books. God wastes nothing, he says with quiet conviction. Every talent, every gift, every capacity for love, finds its purpose, sometimes in ways we never imagined. The world may see only affliction, but I have witnessed miracles bloom in the soil of suffering. He tells you about Brother Francis, who arrived 15 years ago, consumed with bitterness and despair, but who now tends the garden with such devotion that the herbs grow stronger, the flowers bloom brighter, as if responding to his transformed heart. Pain, Father Benedict observes, when surrendered to grace, becomes the very ground in which compassion grows. The shadows lengthen across the floor, marking the passage of time with gentle precision. Soon, it will be time for him to continue his rounds, to carry his presence, his prayers, his unwavering belief in human dignity, to other rooms. Other souls who wait for the sound of his footsteps like prisoners listening for the key that will unlock their cell. But before he leaves, he performs one final ritual. From his satchel, he produces a small wooden cross, carved from olive wood, polished smooth by countless hands, warm from contact with his own weathered palm. He places it gently in your hands, folding your fingers around it like a blessing. This was carved by Brother Marcus. He explains, in the year before he died, he made dozens of them, each one a prayer, each one a promise that love endures, even when the flesh fails. Keep it close and remember, you are held, you are cherished, you are never, ever alone. The cross fits perfectly in your palm, its weight somehow both substantial and comforting. You run your thumb along its surface, feeling the smoothness achieved through hours of patient carving, through the devotion of hands that knew their time was limited, yet chose to create beauty, to leave behind tokens of hope. Father Benedict rises slowly, the weight of his years evident in the careful way he straightens his back, the measured way he shoulders his satchel. But his eyes remain bright, filled with the light of someone who has found his calling, who has discovered that the greatest privilege in life is to witness the sacred in the midst of the seemingly profane. Until next week, he says, making the sign of the cross once more, this time over the entire room, blessing not just you, but the very air, the stones, the filtered light, the silence that will remain after he's gone. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and give you peace. His footsteps retreat down the corridor, that familiar rhythm of oak staff and sandaled feet, growing fainter, but somehow the presence lingers. The room itself seems transformed, charged with the residue of grace, of attention fully given, of love unconditionally offered. You hold the wooden cross to your chest, feeling its warmth spread through your body like a gentle tide. Outside your window, the wind begins to stir, rustling through the hollow chapel arches, carrying Father Benedict's blessings into the evening air, spreading them like seeds, like promises, like prayers that take wing and fly toward heaven. And in the gathering dusk, you understand something new about exile, about isolation, about the strange geography of the human heart. Sometimes, the places we fear most, the rooms we're forced to inhabit against our will, become the very chambers where we finally, learn what it means to be truly at peace. Outside, the wind rustled through hollow chapel arches, carrying his blessings into the evening air, welcoming a new leper, frightened and uncertain. The morning mist clings to the cobblestones like whispered secrets, and through it, you hear something that makes your heart pause. The sound of wheels, creaking slowly, deliberately, across the uneven stones of the outer courtyard. You rise from your simple bed, bare feet finding the cool stone floor, and move toward the narrow window that has become your portal to the world beyond these walls. Through the iron bars, you see them, a wooden cart drawn by a single weary horse, its breath visible in the morning chill, like the ghost of journeys taken and journeys yet to come. On the cart, huddled beneath a rough woolen blanket, sits a figure so small, so fragile, that for a moment you mistake them for a child. But as the cart draws closer to the gate, you see the truth written in the slumped shoulders, the careful way they hold their hands, the familiar mask of cloth drawn across the lower half of their face. Another soul, cast out from the world of the living, seeking refuge in this place of gentle exile. Brother Thomas emerges from the chapel, his brown robes rustling like autumn leaves. He moves with the measured pace of someone who has performed this ritual of welcome many times before. His keys jingle softly as he approaches the iron gate, each note a small song of sanctuary offered, of safety promised. The cart driver, a young man with fear etched deep in the lines around his eyes, keeps his distance, even as he helps the newcomer down from the wooden planks. His movements quick, efficient, desperate to complete his duty and flee, back to the world where such suffering remains safely out of sight. But you watch, as Brother Thomas approaches the trembling figure with infinite gentleness. His voice carries across the courtyard, warm as honey, soft as prayer. Welcome, dear soul. You are safe now. You are home. The newcomer, a woman, you realize now, perhaps 30 years of age, though suffering has aged her beyond her years. She clutches a small bundle to her chest, everything she owns in the world reduced to what can be carried in 2 arms. Her eyes dart around the courtyard like a trapped bird, searching for escape routes that do not exist. You remember that look, that desperate scanning of unfamiliar territory, the way the mind races when faced with the final dissolution of everything once familiar. You wore that same expression, carried that same terror, when your own cart delivered you to these gates 6 months ago. Brother Thomas extends his hand, not demanding, but offering, waiting patiently as she wrestles with the decision to trust, to accept, to take the first step toward whatever life awaits within these walls. There is no shame here, he murmurs, no judgment, only rest for the weary, and peace for the troubled heart. Slowly, so slowly, she reaches out, her fingers barely grazing his palm. But it's enough for him to guide her gently through the gate, through the threshold that separates the world of exile from the world of abandonment. And you watch as the iron bars close behind her, not like a prison, but like arms folding around someone precious, someone finally safe. You know you should give her privacy. Allow her these first moments to absorb the reality of her new circumstances. But something draws you to your door, compels you to open it just wide enough to observe, to remember. to bear witness to this ancient ritual of welcome that has played out countless times within these walls. Sister Margaret appears, as she always does, seeming to materialize from the very stones themselves. Her presence both comforting and efficient. She carries a wooden tray, steam rising from a simple clay bowl. The scent of broth and herbs drifting through the air like an invitation to nourishment, to comfort, to the first taste of kindness in what has surely been a long journey of sorrow. Come, child. Sister Margaret's voice carries the authority of someone who has shepherded many lost souls through their first days of adjustment. Let us get you warm, get some food in your belly, and find you a place to rest. The newcomer, Sarah, you hear her whisper her name like a prayer, like a small offering of trust, follows Sister Margaret toward the refectory, her steps hesitant, uncertain, like someone walking on ice that might crack beneath their weight. You close your door softly, but the memory of your own arrival floods back with startling clarity. The way Brother Thomas had spoken the same words, offered the same gentle welcome. How Sister Margaret had pressed that same warm bowl into your hands, and how the simple act of being fed, of being cared for without condition, had broken something open inside you, some hard shell of pride and fear that had been your only protection. Later, as the afternoon sun slants through your window, you hear voices in the corridor. Sarah's tentative questions, Sister Margaret's patient explanations, the slow revelation of how life unfolds within these walls, the rhythm of prayers that mark the passing hours, the communal meals where conversation flows like wine, the small tasks that give purpose to each day. This is the garden, you hear Sister Margaret saying, their footsteps pausing outside your door. Brother Francis tends it with such love. You'll see, the herbs grow stronger here than anywhere else, as if they understand they're needed, as if they know their purpose. Through your window, you watch as they emerge into the courtyard. Sarah's head turning to take in the neat rows of medicinal plants, the climbing roses that somehow bloom even in this place of exile, the small fountain where birds come to drink, unafraid, treating this sanctuary as their own. And this, Sister Margaret continues, is where we gather in the evenings, when Brother Michael plays his flute, and sometimes, if we're very fortunate, Brother Augustine will tell us stories, tales of saints and miracles, of ordinary people who found extraordinary grace. You see Sarah nod, still overwhelmed, still processing, but something in her posture has begun to shift, the rigid terror of the morning giving way to something softer, more hopeful, like a flower beginning to unfold after a long winter. As evening approaches, you hear the gentle knock on your door that you've been expecting, the soft voice requesting permission to enter. When you open it, Sarah stands there, clutching her small bundle. Sister Margaret beside her with an encouraging smile. Sarah would like to meet some of her new neighbors. Sister Margaret explains, I thought, perhaps, you might share a bit about your own journey here, help her understand that what feels like an ending might also be a beginning. You invite them in. Offer Sarah the single chair while you settle on the edge of your bed. The evening light filters through your window, casting everything in soft gold, making even this simple stone room feel warm, welcoming, sacred. I was terrified. You begin, and see immediate recognition in Sarah's eyes, the relief of someone who has found another person who understands. I thought my life was over, that I was being sent here to die. But what I discovered, you pause, searching for words adequate to the mystery. What I discovered was that sometimes we have to lose everything we think we are, before we can discover who we actually are. Sarah listens with the intensity of someone drinking water after a long drought, her eyes never leaving your face, as if trying to read her own future in your expression. In the peace she seems to detect beneath your words. You tell her about the mornings when you wake to the sound of birds singing in the garden, how that simple music has become more precious than any symphony you heard in your former life. You speak of the friends you've made, the deep conversations that happen when people have nothing left to hide, nothing left to prove. Will it always hurt this much? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. This feeling of being cut away from everything, everyone I've ever loved. The cutting feeling fades. You answer honestly, but it's replaced by something else, something I never expected. A kind of freedom. When you have nothing left to lose, you're free to discover what was always there, waiting beneath all the noise and fear and pretending. Sister Margaret nods approvingly, then rises to continue the evening rounds, but not before placing a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. Rest well tonight, dear one. Tomorrow will bring new mercies. new discoveries, new reasons to be grateful for this strange gift of continued life. After they leave, you remain by your window, watching the last light fade from the courtyard, thinking about beginnings disguised as endings, about the peculiar grace that can bloom in the most unlikely soil. Tomorrow, Sarah will begin to find her rhythm within these walls, will discover her own small miracles, her own unexpected peace. And so, another soul joined the silence, not as prisoner, but as pilgrim, beginning the long journey toward a different kind of home. Hygiene and rituals of cleansing. The morning bell has not yet rung when you wake to the sound of water, gentle, rhythmic, like rain on stone, but softer, more deliberate. It draws you from sleep like a lullaby in reverse, pulling you toward consciousness with its promise of cleansing, of renewal, of the daily ritual that has become as sacred as prayer. You rise slowly, bare feet finding the familiar coolness of stone, and wrap yourself in the rough woolen robe that has become your uniform, your identity, your gentle armor against the world. The corridor stretches before you, lit by the pale pre-dawn light that filters through narrow windows, casting long shadows that dance with each flicker of the oil lamps. The washing room lies at the heart of the compound, a circular chamber built around a natural spring that bubbles up from deep within the earth. The medieval builders, in their wisdom, recognized the sacred nature of this water, designing the space like a baptistry, with stone arches that curve overhead like praying hands, like the ribs of some great sleeping beast. As you enter, the sound of water grows louder, more complex. You hear the gentle splash of the spring feeding into the central basin, the softer trickle of overflow channels carrying water to smaller basins arranged around the room's perimeter, each one carved from a single block of limestone, worn smooth by centuries of hands, of bodies, of the endless human need for cleansing. Sister Margaret is already there, as she always is, moving through the morning preparations with the quiet efficiency of someone who has performed these rituals for decades. She tends the braziers that warm the stone-walled room, adds herbs to the water, sage and rosemary, lavender and mint, creating an atmosphere that speaks to both body and spirit. "Good morning, dear soul," she murmurs, her voice carrying the soft authority of someone who understands that the body's needs are as sacred as the soul's. The water is perfect today, warm but not hot, gentle enough for the most tender skin. You approach your familiar basin, the one you've come to think of as your own, though nothing here truly belongs to anyone. The stone surface bears the marks of countless hands, small depressions worn smooth by fingers seeking purchase, by palms pressed against the rim in moments of weakness, of pain, of the simple exhaustion that comes with existing in a body that no longer cooperates. The water is indeed perfect, warmed by the heated stones that Sister Margaret tends throughout the night, carrying the faint mineral taste of deep earth, of aquifers that have never seen sunlight, of purity that seems impossible in this world of contamination and fear. You begin the ritual that has become as natural as breathing. First, the removal of your nightclothes, the careful folding, the gentle placement in the basket that will carry them to the laundry, where other hands will tend them with the same reverence, the same understanding that even the simplest cloth, when it has comforted a suffering body, becomes somehow sacred. The first touch of water against your skin is always a small shock, a moment of remembering what it feels like to be clean, to be cared for, to have your physical needs met with such tenderness. You cup the water in your palms, watch it run between your fingers like liquid light, like mercy made manifest, like the tears of angels. Brother Francis appears beside you, his own basin already filled, his movements careful, deliberate. He has been here longer than anyone 15 years, and his body shows the progression of the disease, the way it reshapes flesh, redefines the boundaries of what we call human. Yet there is something in his manner, in the way he approaches this daily ritual, that speaks of acceptance, of a peace that transcends physical form. The water remembers, he says softly, his voice carrying the weight of someone who has discovered profound truths in the simplest things. Every drop that touches us carries the memory of rain, of rivers, of the great ocean that connects all things. We are not separate, not isolated. We are part of the endless cycle of cleansing, of renewal. You listen to his words as you work the soft soap into your skin. Soap made by Brother Augustine from olive oil and lye, scented with herbs from the garden. Each bar a small masterpiece of care, of attention to detail that speaks to the dignity of every person who will use it. The soap foams between your fingers, white and clean, carrying away the residue of sleep, of dreams, of the night's accumulation of fear and sorrow. You work it into your hair, feeling the oil that has built up over days. The dust that settles on everything in this place, all of it dissolving, disappearing into the water that will carry it away, back to the earth, back to the cycle of purification and renewal. Around you, others begin to arrive. Sarah, still new enough to hesitate at the threshold, her eyes wide with the wonder of discovering that even here, especially here, the body is treated with reverence, with respect. Brother Michael, humming softly as he always does, his voice creating a gentle soundtrack to the morning's ablutions. The washing room fills with the sounds of water, of quiet conversation, of the soft splash of bodies lowering themselves into the larger communal basin, built for those who need assistance, who can no longer manage the simple act of washing themselves. Here, hands that know suffering reach out to help, to support, to offer the gift of cleanliness to those who cannot achieve it alone. You watch as Sister Margaret helps old Brother Edmund, his body bent with age and disease, as she supports his weight, guides him into the warm water, speaks to him in the gentle tones one might use with a beloved child. There now, that's better, let the water hold you, let it wash away the night's troubles. The ritual continues, the rinsing, the careful attention to every part of the body that requires cleansing. You pour water over your head, feel it cascade down your back, carrying with it not just physical dirt, but something deeper, some accumulation of shame, of self-hatred, of the poison that society has taught you to carry about your own flesh. Here, in this circular room, under these stone arches, the body is not the enemy, not the betrayer, not the prison. It is simply what it is, the vessel that carries the soul through this earthly journey, deserving of care, of attention, of the gentle ministrations that the morning light grows stronger, filtering through the high windows, casting rainbow patterns on the water's surface. The steam rises like incense, carrying the scent of herbs, of clean skin, of the indefinable fragrance of human dignity restored. You breathe deeply, feeling the clean air fill your lungs, the moisture settling on your skin like a blessing. As you prepare to leave, to return to your cell for the morning meal, you pause at the central basin, the spring that feeds all the others. The water bubbles up continuously, never stopping, never failing. A reminder that even in this place of exile, life continues, renewal continues. The possibility of cleansing is always present. Sister Margaret approaches with clean clothes, rough but soft, worn but mended with care. The body, she says, wrapping you in the familiar fabric, is the temple of the soul, and every temple, no matter how humble, deserves to be kept clean, to be honored, to be treated with the reverence due to sacred space. You nod, understanding flowing through you like the water itself. Here, in this simple room, with its stone basins and mineral-scented air, you have learned something profound about the nature of cleanliness, about the difference between being clean and being pure, about the way water can wash away not just dirt, but shame, not just contamination, but the lies we tell ourselves about our own worth. The washing room empties slowly, each person carrying with them the gift of cleanliness, of dignity restored, of the daily reminder that care for the body is not vanity, but sacrament, not luxury, but necessity, not separate from spiritual practice, but central to it. As you walk back through the corridor, your skin still glowing from the warm water, your hair still damp with the spring's gift, you understand something new about exile, about the way being cast out from one kind of life can lead to the discovery of another, deeper, more essential, more true. The water continues its ancient song, bubbling up from the earth's depths, offering its gift to any who approach with open hands, with humble hearts, with the willingness to be cleansed, not just of dirt, but of the accumulated grime of a world that has forgotten how to see the sacred in the simple act of washing, of caring, of treating every body as the temple it was always meant to be. Evenings when old stories are whispered. The last light of day fades beyond the courtyard walls, and with it comes the gentle ritual that has marked the end of each day for generations. The lighting of the great hearth in the common hall, where shadows dance against ancient stone, and voices gather like prayers around the warmth. You make your way through corridors that have grown familiar as your own heartbeat, past cells where others prepare for the evening's communion, past the small chapel where Brother Thomas lights the oil lamps that will burn through the night, casting their gentle glow over carved saints who watch with stone eyes, witnesses to centuries of human sorrow and human resilience. The The common hall stretches before you, its vaulted ceiling disappearing into darkness above, supported by columns that seem to grow from the earth itself, like ancient trees turned to stone. The great fireplace dominates one wall, built large enough to warm the entire space, its hearth blackened by countless fires, its stones holding the memory of every story ever told within these walls. Brother Augustine is already there, kneeling before the cold hearth, arranging kindling with the careful precision of someone who understands that fire, like story, requires the right conditions, the proper preparation, the gentle coaxing of spark into flame. His weathered hands move with practiced grace, each piece of wood placed with intention, with reverence for the warmth it will provide. The tinder catches, a small miracle of light blooming in the darkness, growing stronger as he feeds it twigs, then larger branches, then logs seasoned with time and patience. The flames leap higher, casting dancing shadows across the stone walls, transforming the austere chamber into something intimate, something magical, something that feels like the very heart of sanctuary. One by one, they begin to arrive, the evening congregation of the forgotten. Sarah, still new enough to hang back at the edges, uncertain of her place in this nightly ritual. Brother Francis, his face serene in the firelight, hands folded in his lap like a man who has made peace with whatever stories his body tells. Sister Margaret, carrying a wooden tray laden with clay cups, steam rising from each one, the scent of herbs and honey drifting through the air like incense. Chamomile tonight, she announces, her voice carrying the warm authority of someone who has tended countless souls through countless evenings. With a touch of valerian, to ease the mind toward rest, and honey from our own hives, to remind us that even in exile, sweetness can be found. The cups pass from hand to hand, warm clay against cold fingers, the herbal tea carrying flavors that speak of gardens tended with love, of bees that know no boundaries between the world of the healthy and the world of the afflicted, of sweetness that transcends the artificial divisions humans create. Brother Michael settles near the fire, his flute catching the light like silver, like captured starlight. He raises it to his lips, and the first notes float through the air, soft and haunting. A melody that seems to have existed forever, waiting for this moment. This room, these particular souls gathered around this particular fire. The music weaves between the stone columns, echoes off the vaulted ceiling, creates a sanctuary within the sanctuary, a space where time moves differently, where the concerns of the day dissolve like sugar in warm tea, where the soul remembers what it feels like to simply be. Gather close, Brother Augustine calls, his voice carrying over the gentle music. Come, sit where the fire can warm you, where the stories can find you. Tonight, like every night, we remember that we are more than our afflictions, more than our exile, more than the world's definition of who we are. You find your place in the rough circle that forms naturally around the hearth. Sarah beside you, still clutching her tea like a lifeline, still amazed. You think, to discover that even here, especially here, beauty exists, community exists, the ancient human need for story, for connection, for the shared warmth of narrative continues. Brother Augustine's eyes reflect the firelight, holding depths that speak of years spent listening, collecting, preserving the stories that might otherwise be lost. He clears his throat, a sound that has become as familiar as the call to prayer, as comforting as the evening bell, as necessary as bread. Long ago, he begins, and immediately the room settles into deeper stillness. Even the fire seems to burn more quietly, as if it too understands the sacred nature of what is about to unfold. In a land not so different from our own, there lived a young woman named Marguerite. His voice carries the practiced cadence of someone who has told this story countless times, yet makes it new with each telling, finding fresh meanings, discovering unexplored depths. The tale unfolds slowly, patiently, like a flower opening to morning light. Marguerite, beautiful and beloved, struck down in the prime of life by the same affliction that has brought you all to this place. Cast out from her village, from her family, from everything she had ever known. She wandered for days, weeks, searching for a place that would accept her, for hands that would not recoil, for eyes that would still see her humanity. She came at last. Brother Augustine continues, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carries more power than shouting, to a small monastery, where the brothers had taken a vow, not just of poverty, not just of chastity, but of welcome. They had promised to turn no one away, no matter how fearsome their appearance, no matter how the world had marked them as untouchable. around the fire, heads nod with recognition, with the deep understanding that comes from living this truth, from discovering that sometimes the places we fear most become the very locations where we finally learn what it means to be home. The story weaves on. Marguerite's transformation from despair to acceptance. Her discovery of gifts she never knew she possessed. Her talent for healing, for listening, for seeing the divine spark in others who had been similarly cast aside. The fire crackles punctuation to the narrative. Sparks rising like prayers, like hopes, like the countless souls who have found refuge in similar sanctuaries. But the most remarkable thing, Brother Augustine's voice grows even softer, drawing his listeners closer, creating intimacy within intimacy, was not what the monastery gave to Marguerite, but what she gave to them. Her presence, her gratitude, her willingness to serve, transformed not just her own life, but the lives of everyone she touched. Sister Margaret sets down her empty cup, leans forward slightly, her face glowing in the firelight. "It's true," she murmurs. "I've seen it here, again and again. The ones who arrive most broken, most afraid, often become the very ones who heal others, as if suffering, when transformed by grace, becomes the medicine the world needs most." Sarah shifts beside you, her breath catching slightly, and you see in her eyes the recognition, the dawning understanding that this story, like all the best stories, is not just about someone else, somewhere else, sometime else. It is about her, about you, about every soul who has ever felt cast out, forgotten, abandoned by a world that fears what it cannot understand. Brother Michael's flute joins the narrative, weaving melodies between the words, creating a soundtrack that makes the medieval tale feel immediate, present, alive. The music speaks of journeys undertaken in darkness, of lights discovered in unexpected places, of the strange alchemy that transforms suffering into compassion, exile into sanctuary, endings into beginnings. The fire burns lower, the flames settling into the steady glow of well-seasoned logs. The teacups empty, the shadows deepen, but the story continues, spinning out into the night like thread from a careful spinner's wheel, connecting past to present, connecting the listeners to each other, connecting the individual tale to the universal narrative of human resilience. And so, Brother Augustine concludes, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a story well told, of a truth successfully conveyed. Marguerite learned what we all must learn, that the places we are sent are often the very places we were meant to find. That exile, when embraced rather than resisted, becomes pilgrimage, becomes homecoming, becomes the unexpected answer to prayers we didn't even know we were praying. The silence that follows is not empty, but full, pregnant with understanding, with recognition, with the deep peace that comes from hearing one's own story reflected in ancient words, in timeless truths, in the eternal human capacity to find meaning, to create beauty, to discover sanctuary in the most unlikely places. One by one, they begin to stir, to gather empty cups, to banking the fire for the night. But the warmth remains, not just in the glowing coals, but in hearts that have been fed, in souls that have been reminded of their own worth, their own purpose, their own capacity for transformation. In the crackling of the fire, time drifted away, carrying with it the day's sorrows, leaving behind the ember glow of stories shared, of community discovered, of the eternal truth that no one is ever truly alone. A noble or doctor visits, stirring strange emotions. The morning arrives with unusual stirring, a ripple of anticipation that passes through the stone corridors like wind through wheat fields. You sense it before you understand it, the way animals sense storms approaching, the way the very air seems to hold its breath in preparation for something different. Brother Thomas moves through the halls with uncommon urgency, his usual measured pace quickened by purpose. His keys jingle with a sharper rhythm, a metallic song of preparation, of spaces being readied for inspection, for judgment, for the uncomfortable collision between two worlds that rarely, ever, intersect. From your window, you watch as Sister Margaret directs the sweeping of the courtyard, the arrangement of herbs in neat rows, the careful positioning of everything that might speak well of this place, this sanctuary that suddenly feels, exposed, vulnerable, like a hermit crab caught between shells. Lord William de Montfort arrives today. Brother Thomas announces during the morning meal, his voice carrying both reverence and something else, something that might be anxiety. He comes with his physician, Master Geoffrey, to observe our methods, to assess our situation. The bread in your mouth turns dry, tasteless. Around the refectory table, faces that have grown comfortable in their exile now were expressions of uncertainty, of the peculiar shame that comes from being seen by those who still live in the world you were forced to leave behind. Sarah, seated beside you, sets down her wooden spoon with trembling fingers. Will they make us leave? She whispers. And in her voice you hear the terror of someone who has just begun to believe in the possibility of belonging, of safety, of home. No, dear child. Sister Margaret's voice carries reassurance like medicine, like balm applied to fresh wounds. Lord William is our patron, our protector. He comes not to condemn, but to understand, to see with his own eyes the good work that unfolds within these walls. But even her words cannot entirely dispel the tension that now hangs in the air like morning mist, thick, obscuring, making everything feel uncertain, strange. You remember suddenly what it felt like to be looked at, to be examined, to be reduced to your affliction rather than recognized as a soul carrying an affliction. The afternoon brings the sound of horses, the jingle of harness, the low voices of men accustomed to command, to deference, to moving through the world with the confidence of those who have never been cast out, never been forced to beg for shelter, never had to learn the geography of exile. Through your window, you watch the small procession enter the courtyard. Lord William, tall and imposing even in his middle years, his velvet cloak a deep burgundy that speaks of wealth, of position, of a life lived far from the concerns that define your days. Beside him walks a smaller man, Master Geoffrey, the physician, his leather satchel bouncing against his hip with each step, his eyes already moving, cataloging, assessing. They are accompanied by 2 guards, young men whose discomfort is written clearly in their posture, in the way they breathe through their mouths, in the careful distance they maintain from anything, anyone, that might carry contamination back to the world they will return to when this duty is complete. Brother Thomas emerges to greet them, his bow deep, respectful, but somehow maintaining dignity, the particular grace of someone who serves the rejected yet refuses to be diminished by that service. My lord, welcome to our humble community. We are honored by your presence. Lord William's response carries the practiced kindness of nobility. Genuine perhaps, but delivered from a height that cannot quite bridge the distance between his world and this one. Brother Thomas, I trust you are well. I have come, as promised, to see how our charitable works progress. The word charitable hangs in the air like incense, like something sweet that cannot quite mask an underlying bitterness. You are reminded suddenly that your existence here, your very survival, depends upon the goodwill of those who live safely beyond these walls, who contribute to your care from a distance that preserves their own security, their own sense of separation from your fate. They begin their tour, voices carrying through windows, through doorways, through the stone corridors that suddenly feel more like a museum than a home. You hear Master Geoffrey's questions, clinical, precise, delivered with the detachment of someone studying specimens rather than encountering human beings. How many residents currently? His voice echoes from the infirmary. What is the typical progression of symptoms? What treatments have proven most effective? Brother Thomas responds with patience, with dignity, providing the information requested while somehow maintaining the humanity of those being discussed. We currently house 37 souls, each one precious, each one deserving of care regardless of prognosis. The footsteps approach your corridor, your section of this carefully ordered world. You sit on your bed, hands folded, trying to appear. What? Peaceful? Grateful? Worthy of the charity that keeps you fed, sheltered, alive? The door opens without ceremony, without the gentle knock that usually precedes any intrusion into your private space. Lord William fills the doorway, his presence commanding even in this humble cell. His eyes move quickly, taking inventory, the simple bed, the wooden cross on the wall, the small collection of letters never sent, your possessions, your entire life, reduced to what can be absorbed in a single glance. And this is? He asks, addressing Brother Thomas rather than you, as if you were furniture, decoration, something to be discussed rather than spoken with. This is one of our newer residents. Brother Thomas replies, his voice carefully neutral. Arrived 6 months ago, has adapted well to our community, contributes to our daily prayers, assists with the garden when strength permits. Master Geoffrey steps forward, his physician's eye noting details that make you acutely aware of your altered appearance, of the ways your body has changed, of the marks that declare your condition to anyone with knowledge to read them. May I? he asks, not of you, but of Brother Thomas, seeking permission to examine, to study, to satisfy his professional curiosity. The examination is brief, impersonal, hands that probe and measure and document, eyes that see disease rather than person, that catalog symptoms rather than acknowledge the soul behind the symptoms. You submit to it, understanding that your continued sanctuary depends upon this cooperation, upon being a good subject, a worthy recipient of charitable concern. Fascinating, Master Geoffrey murmurs, making notes in his leather-bound journal. The progression appears typical, though slower than some cases. The treatments seem to provide comfort, if not cure. Lord William nods, his attention already moving beyond you, beyond this room, toward the next stop on his tour of benevolence. Excellent work, Brother Thomas, most excellent. The church will be pleased with our investment in this worthy cause. They leave as abruptly as they arrived, voices fading down the corridor, footsteps diminishing, until once again you are alone in your cell. But somehow, the space feels different, contaminated, not by disease, but by the particular pollution that comes from being seen as object rather than subject, as recipient rather than person, as charity case rather than human being. Later, as evening settles over the compound, you join the others in the common hall, but the usual warmth feels muted, diminished. The visit has left its mark, has reminded everyone of their position, their dependence, their existence at the margins of a world that prefers to keep them at a safe distance. They mean well, Sister Margaret says, but her voice lacks its usual conviction. Lord William has been generous, without his support. I know, Brother Francis replies, his weathered face thoughtful in the firelight. Yet sometimes I wonder if their charity costs us something, some part of ourselves that we cannot afford to lose. The conversation that follows is unlike the usual evening discussions, quieter, more tentative, as if the visit has awakened something uncomfortable, some awareness of the complicated relationship between benefactor and beneficiary, between those who give from safety and those who receive from exile. Sarah speaks into the silence, her voice small but clear. When he looked at me, I felt like I disappeared, like everything I am, everything I've learned here, everything I've become, simply vanished, and all that remained was the disease. Her words find echo in every face around the fire, the recognition of a shared experience, the particular erasure that occurs when one is seen only through the lens of affliction, when identity collapses into diagnosis, when person becomes problem. But we know better, Brother Augustine says finally, his voice carrying the gentle authority of someone who has learned hard truths through long experience. We know who we are, not despite our condition, but including it. We are more than they can see, more than they can understand, more than their charity can encompass. The fire crackles agreement, sparks rising like prayers, like affirmations, like small rebellions against the reduction of human complexity to medical classification. The warmth spreads through the room, not just physical heat, but the deeper warmth of community, of mutual recognition, of souls who refuse to be diminished by external judgment. As the evening deepens, as the visitors retreat to their comfortable beds in the world beyond these walls, you understand something new about sanctuary, about the price of safety, about the complicated dance between dependence and dignity, between gratitude and self-respect, between accepting help and maintaining humanity. The outside world had visited, had observed, had documented, had departed, leaving behind the subtle residue of its judgment, its pity, its comfortable distance. But here, in this circle of firelight, among these companions in exile, you remember who you are, who you have always been, who you continue to become. In the morning, Lord William's gold will continue to fund your meals, your shelter, your care. But tonight, in this moment, you are rich in ways that gold cannot measure, wealthy in connections that charity cannot create, abundant in a peace that no external judgment can diminish. The flames dance lower, the shadows deepen, but the warmth remains, generated not by wood and kindling, but by the irreducible truth of human worth, by the knowledge that some things, the most important things, cannot be given or taken away, but only recognized or ignored by eyes willing or unwilling to truly see. A gentle preview of what's to come. In the quiet corner of the leper house, where morning light filters through narrow windows, you'll discover the workshop of Brother Thomas, where scarred hands still create beauty from simple wood, where the soft scrape of chisel against oak becomes a meditation, and where purpose blooms even in exile. The morning mist clings to the stone walls as you make your way through the courtyard, your footsteps muffled by the damp earth beneath. From somewhere beyond the dormitory, you hear it, a soft, rhythmic sound that cuts through the silence like a gentle heartbeat. Scrape, pause. It's coming from the small building tucked into the far corner of the compound, where ivy climbs the weathered walls and a thin ribbon of smoke rises from a modest chimney. You push open the heavy wooden door, and the scent hits you immediately. The warm, earthy smell of fresh wood shavings mixed with something else, beeswax, perhaps, and the faint sweetness of linseed oil. The room is bathed in golden light streaming through high windows, and there, bent over a worn wooden workbench, is Brother Thomas. His hands move with practiced precision despite the telltale signs of his affliction. Fingers that have lost their feeling, skin marked by the disease that brought him here 7 years ago. Yet somehow, impossibly, those same hands guide the chisel with the tenderness of a mother's touch, coaxing life from a piece of weathered oak. "Good morning," he says without looking up, his voice soft and measured. "I wondered when you might find your way here." The chisel pauses in its work, and he finally raises his eyes to meet yours. They're kind eyes, crinkled at the corners from years of squinting at fine detail work, and there's something in them that speaks of peace found in purpose. The workshop is a marvel of quiet organization. Tools hang from wooden pegs driven into the walls. Chisels of every size, mallets worn smooth by countless hours of use, saws with teeth that catch the morning light like tiny silver smiles. Shelves line the walls, holding projects in various stages of completion. Small wooden crosses, their surfaces polished to a warm glow. Prayer beads carved from boxwood, each one perfectly round and smooth. And there, in the corner, something larger taking shape. An altarpiece, perhaps, with delicate roses blooming across its surface in relief. "I was a carpenter before," Thomas explains, running his fingertips along the grain of the wood before him. "In the village of Ashford, 2 days' ride from here. Had a workshop there too, though not quite so." He pauses, searching for the word, peaceful as this one. He picks up a small piece of pine, holding it up to the light. "When I first arrived here, I thought my hands were finished. The disease had taken so much feeling from them. But Brother Benedict, he was the prior then, he said something I'll never forget. He said, 'Thomas, your hands may not feel the wood the same way, but your heart still knows what beauty looks like.'" The chisel returns to its work, and you watch as tiny curls of wood fall away like golden snow. What's emerging is a small figure, a saint perhaps, or maybe just a simple human form with arms outstretched in prayer or welcome. The lack of sensation in his fingers doesn't seem to matter. His hands remember the motions, the pressure, the angle of the blade against the grain. "I make things for the chapel mostly," he continues, his voice taking on the rhythm of his work. "New candlesticks when the old ones wear out. Prayer book stands. Sometimes the brothers from the scriptorium ask for a special bookmark or a small case to hold their most precious manuscripts." He pauses to brush away the shavings. "But mostly I make things for here. For us." He gestures to a shelf where dozens of small wooden bowls sit waiting. "Eating bowls," he explains. "We break them often. Hands that can't feel properly tend to drop things. So I make new ones. Simple things, but necessary." There's no bitterness in his voice, only acceptance, maybe even contentment. The sound of the chisel continues, steady and sure. Scrape, pause, scrape. It's almost hypnotic, this rhythm of creation. Outside, you can hear the distant sound of the chapel bell marking the 3rd hour. But here in the workshop, time seems to move differently. Slower, more deliberately. "Would you like to try?" Thomas asks suddenly, setting down his chisel and reaching for a small block of unused wood. "It's pine, forgiving wood for beginners. And I have smaller tools that might suit your hands better." He selects a delicate chisel, its handle worn smooth by use, and places it in your palm. The weight of it is surprising, heavier than you expected, but balanced perfectly. "Here," he says, guiding your hands to the wood. "Feel for the grain first. Don't fight it, work with it. The wood wants to tell you which way to cut." Under his patient guidance, you make your first tentative scrapes. The wood yields reluctantly at first, then more easily as you find the rhythm. There's something deeply satisfying about it. The way the blade bites into the pine, the small shower of shavings that fall to the floor, the gradual emergence of something smooth and purposeful from the rough block. In the village, Thomas says as you work, I made big things. Tables that could seat a dozen people. Bed frames that would last generations. Doors thick enough to keep out winter storms. He picks up his own chisel again, returning to the small figure he's been carving. Here, I make small things. But small doesn't mean unimportant. He holds up a wooden spoon he's been working on, its bowl perfectly shaped, its handle decorated with tiny carved leaves. Sister Margaret in the kitchen. She's been here longer than anyone. Her hands shake terribly now. But this spoon, see how the handle is thicker than usual? How the bowl is deeper. She can hold it steady, and it won't slip from her grasp. One small spoon, but it means she can eat with dignity. The morning passes like this, in the quiet companionship of shared work. Thomas tells you about his other projects. The set of wooden platters he's making for the feast day of St. Lazarus, each one carved with a different flower. The new confessional screen for the chapel, with its intricate geometric patterns that will allow voices to pass through while preserving privacy. The children's toys he carves for the rare visits from families in the nearby village. Simple wooden animals that bring joy to young faces that have learned to fear places like this. People think we have nothing to give, he says, pausing to examine the figure in his hands. The carved face is taking shape now, peaceful, serene, with closed eyes and a slight smile. They think the disease takes everything from us. But it doesn't take skill. It doesn't take the desire to create something beautiful. And it certainly doesn't take the need to feel useful. The figure is nearly complete now. Thomas reaches for a piece of fine sandpaper and begins the delicate work of smoothing the rough edges. This one is for Brother Matthew, he explains. He's been struggling lately. The disease is progressing, and he's losing hope. I thought maybe having a small figure to hold during prayers might help. Something beautiful that came from hands like his own. As the sun climbs higher, casting longer shadows across the workshop floor, you realize that this small room represents something profound. It's not just a place where broken things are mended or useful objects are made. It's a place where dignity is preserved, where the human need to create and contribute finds expression despite everything that would suggest it should be extinguished. Thomas sets down the completed figure and stretches his back, looking satisfied. Would you like to see the altarpiece? He asks, moving toward the corner where the larger project waits under a cloth covering. He pulls the fabric away to reveal something extraordinary, a wooden panel nearly 3 feet tall, carved with a scene of the Last Supper. The figures are rendered with remarkable detail, their faces full of emotion, their robes flowing naturally despite being carved from solid oak. It's for the new chapel they're building in the village, he explains. They asked me to make it, said they wanted something created by someone who understood suffering. He runs his fingers over the carved disciples, lingering on the figure of Christ at the center. I've been working on it for 2 years. Should be finished by Christmas. The afternoon light slants through the windows now, painting everything in gold. The workshop settles into its quiet rhythm again. The soft scrape of tools, the whisper of sandpaper against wood, the gentle breathing of concentrated work. Here, in this forgotten corner of the world, something beautiful is always being born. As you prepare to leave, Thomas hands you the small piece you've been working on. It's rough still, amateur in its execution, but it's yours. Keep it, he says with a smile. Remember that even in the darkest places, there's always something that can be made beautiful. And as you step back into the courtyard, the wooden figure warm in your palm, you carry with you the sound of his workshop, that gentle, persistent rhythm of creation that refuses to be silenced, no matter what the world might take away. The soft scrape of chisel against wood follows you into the afternoon, a meditation on purpose that will echo in your dreams. A gentle preview of what's to come. Beyond the main courtyard, where wild roses climb through broken windows, stands a chapel that time has begun to reclaim, where Gothic arches frame patches of sky, where ancient stones hold the echoes of 1,000 whispered prayers, and where silence itself has become a kind of sacred music. The afternoon sun is beginning its slow descent when you find yourself drawn away from the busy heart of the leper house, past the herb gardens where Brother Francis tends his healing plants, beyond the well where sisters gather to draw water for the evening meal. Your feet seem to know the way without your mind directing them, following a narrow path that winds between overgrown hedgerows thick with honeysuckle and wild briar. The path leads you through a gap in what was once a carefully maintained wall, its stones now scattered and softened by decades of weather. And there, rising from a grove of ancient yew trees, you see it, the forgotten chapel, its Gothic silhouette etched against the amber sky like a prayer carved in stone. It takes your breath away, this ruin that refuses to surrender its dignity. The roof has long since fallen away, leaving the ribbed arches open to the heavens, but somehow this only adds to its beauty. Where once there was timber and slate, now there are only the delicate fingers of stone reaching upward, framing patches of sky that shift from gold to rose as the sun continues its journey toward the horizon. Ivy has claimed much of the outer walls, its dark green leaves creating a tapestry that changes with the seasons. In spring, you've been told, the chapel walls bloom with tiny white flowers that smell of honey and earth. Now, in the deep days of autumn, the ivy glows with touches of crimson and gold, as if the stones themselves are blushing in the evening light. You push open the heavy wooden door, one of the few elements that remains intact, and step inside. The hinges protest with a soft groan that echoes upward through the empty arches, and then settles into the profound silence that lives here. The floor is a patchwork of original stone tiles and wild grasses that have found purchase in the joints between them. Tiny yellow flowers, you think they might be chamomile, dot the green carpet with spots of sunshine. Your footsteps make almost no sound as you walk slowly down what was once the nave, past columns that still stand proud despite their burden of years. At the far end, where the altar once stood, a single beam of light slants through a high window, illuminating a patch of floor where someone has placed a simple wooden cross. Brother Thomas's work, you realize, recognizing the careful craftsmanship. Fresh wildflowers lie at its base. Purple asters and late-blooming roses, their petals scattered by the evening breeze that moves freely through the open roof. You settle onto a fallen stone that has become a natural seat, worn smooth by weather and by the occasional visitor who finds their way here. The silence is profound, but it's not empty. It's full of something you can't quite name. The accumulated weight of centuries of prayer, perhaps, or simply the peace that comes when human ambition finally surrenders to time and nature. As your eyes adjust to the dimmer light within the chapel walls, you begin to notice details that weren't immediately apparent. There, carved into one of the columns, is a delicate relief of grapevines and wheat stalks, symbols of communion that have outlasted the altar they once adorned. High above, where the roof beams once rested, stone corbels shaped like angels' faces peer down with expressions of eternal serenity. In one corner, nearly hidden by a curtain of ivy, you discover a small alcove that once held a statue. The statue itself is long gone, but someone has placed a handful of autumn leaves in the niche. Maple leaves the color of flame, oak leaves bronzed by frost. It's a simple gesture, but it speaks of continuity, of the human need to honor sacred spaces, even when they've been abandoned by official ceremony. A sound draws your attention, not the silence being broken, but rather silence being given voice. It's the wind moving through the empty arches, creating a low, musical hum that rises and falls like a distant choir. The stones themselves seem to be singing, their ancient song mixing with the whisper of leaves and the far-off call of evening birds. You close your eyes and let the sound wash over you. In your imagination, you can almost hear the voices that once filled this space, the Latin chants of morning prayers, the rustle of robes as the community gathered for worship, the soft weeping of those who came here seeking comfort in their darkest hours. The chapel remembers, even if the world beyond its walls has forgotten. When you open your eyes again, the light has shifted. The sun is lower now, sending longer shafts of gold through the windows, picking out details that weren't visible before. There, scratched into the soft stone of a window sill, are names and dates. Pilgrims who stopped here decades ago, leaving their mark for posterity. Margaret of Wessex, 1294, reads one. In memory of my beloved John, says another. You rise and move closer to examine these humble memorials. Some are weathered almost beyond reading, but others are still clear enough to make out. Thomas the Miller, seeking grace for his daughter. Eleanor, who found peace here. Brother Benedict, prior of this house, 1301 to 1318. Each name represents a life, a story, a moment when someone felt moved to record their presence in this sacred space. Near the altar area, you discover something even more touching. A small section of wall where children's handprints have been pressed into the soft mortar between stones. Tiny palms and fingers, preserved in stone like fossils of innocence. These must date from the early days of the chapel, when families might have brought their children here for blessing before the fear of contagion. As you explore further, you find evidence that the chapel is not as forgotten as it first appeared. In several places, you notice signs of careful maintenance. Stones that have been remortared, weeds that have been cleared from around the base of columns, wooden benches that show recent repair work. Someone still cares for this place, still tends it with the devotion it deserves. The wind shifts, bringing with it the scent of wood smoke from the main complex and the dinner bell's distant call. But you're not ready to leave yet. There's something about this place that demands contemplation, that asks you to sit still and simply be present with the accumulated weight of all the prayers that have been offered here. You find yourself thinking about permanence and impermanence, about the way stone endures while human institutions crumble, about how nature and architecture can collaborate to create something more beautiful than either could achieve alone. The chapel is more moving in its partial ruin than it might have been in its original perfection. Time has edited it, removing everything unnecessary and leaving only the essential elements: the reaching arches, the play of light and shadow, the invitation to look upward. A small movement catches your eye. There, perched on one of the stone corbels high above, is a dove. It regards you with one bright eye, then settles more comfortably into its roost. This chapel has become home to more than just memories. It shelters the creatures that humans, in their fear and haste, often overlook. As the shadows lengthen and the light begins to fade toward purple, you realize that you've stumbled upon something precious. This forgotten chapel is not abandoned, it's been transformed. No longer bound by the schedules and ceremonies of formal worship, it has become a place of pure contemplation, where the boundary between sacred and natural has dissolved into something richer than either. The evening breeze stirs the ivy and carries with it the sound of vespers being sung in the main chapel. The voices drift across the darkening grounds, mixing with the natural music of the wind through stone. For a moment, past and present merge, and you can almost see the ghostly figures of long-dead monks and pilgrims joining their voices to the eternal song. You stand slowly, reluctant to break the spell, but knowing that the community will be gathering for the evening meal. As you make your way back toward the door, you pause to add your own small offering to the flowers at the base of Brother Thomas's cross. A sprig of rosemary from the herb garden, its scent sharp and clean in the cooling air. Before you leave, you turn back for one last look. The chapel stands patient and eternal in the growing dusk, its empty windows framing the first pale stars. Tomorrow, the sun will rise again through those same windows, painting new patterns of light and shadow on the stone floor. The seasons will continue their ancient dance, bringing snow and flowers and falling leaves. And the chapel will endure, holding its silence like a precious gift, waiting for the next soul who needs to discover that some things are made more beautiful, not less, by the passage of time. Outside, the wind rustles through hollow chapel arches, carrying with it the whispered prayers of centuries, as darkness settles gently over stones that remember everything. A gentle preview of what's to come. On the feast day of St. Lazarus, when autumn's chill settles over the leper house, something magical stirs in the darkness. Tonight, dozens of small flames will dance through ancient corridors. Voices will rise in unison after months of whispered prayers. And you'll discover that even in exile, the human spirit finds ways to celebrate the light. The air is crisp with the promise of winter when you wake to find the entire leper house transformed. It's the 29th day of October, the feast of St. Lazarus, patron saint of lepers, and all who suffer in body and spirit. For weeks, the community has been preparing for this night, and now the anticipation hangs in the air like the scent of beeswax and pine. Even before dawn, you can hear the gentle bustle of preparation echoing through the stone corridors. Sister Catherine's voice drifts from the kitchen, humming an old hymn as she kneads dough for the special feast bread. From Brother Thomas's workshop comes the soft scraping of final touches being added to the wooden candlesticks he's been crafting for weeks, each one carved with delicate roses and thorns, symbols of beauty emerging from suffering. As the sun rises pale and distant through the November mist, you join the quiet procession of residents making their way to the chapel for morning prayers. But today feels different. There's an energy in the air, a sense of shared purpose that transforms the usual morning routine into something almost ceremonial. Brother Benedict, the current prior, stands at the altar with his weathered hands folded in prayer. His voice, when he speaks, carries the weight of tradition and the warmth of genuine care. Today we remember our patron saint, he says, his words echoing softly off the stone walls. Lazarus, who knew death and resurrection. Lazarus, who understood what it means to be cast out and called back. Tonight, we walk in his footsteps, carrying light into darkness. The morning passes in a blur of gentle activity. In the kitchen, Sister Margaret supervises the preparation of the feast. Roasted fowl that a benefactor from the nearby village has donated, vegetables from the colony's own gardens, and honey cakes shaped like small stars. The scent of cinnamon and nutmeg fills the air, spices precious and rare, saved for this special day. Meanwhile, in the scriptorium, Brother Matthias carefully illuminates the final letters of a special psalm book, his steady hand creating intricate borders of gold and azure around the ancient words. For this night only, he explains to you with a gentle smile, we use our finest work. Even here, even now, we create beauty worthy of celebration. As afternoon settles into evening, the real magic begins. In the chapel, dozens of candles are being arranged, some tall and elegant on the altar, others small and simple in the hands of each resident. Brother Thomas has outdone himself with the candlesticks, each one unique, each one a small work of art that will hold its flame like a prayer made visible. The candles themselves are special too, made from the purest beeswax, donated by a monastery 3 days' ride away. Their flames burn clear and steady, without the smoke and sputtering of common tallow candles. When lit, they fill the chapel with a warm, golden glow that seems to emanate from within the very stones. As darkness falls outside, the community gathers in the chapel courtyard. You count perhaps 40 souls, men and women, young and old, all united by the circumstances that brought them here, all about to be transformed by the simple act of carrying light together. Each person holds an unlit candle, and there's something beautiful about the way the darkness makes equals of them all. Brother Benedict emerges from the chapel carrying the Paschal candle, a tall, white column decorated with symbols of resurrection. Its flame dances in the evening breeze, casting dancing shadows on the faces gathered around it. From one light, many lights, he says, his voice carrying clearly in the still air. From darkness, illumination. From exile, community. One by one, the residents step forward to light their candles from the Paschal flame. The light spreads slowly, purposefully, each new flame adding to the growing circle of illumination. You watch faces emerge from the darkness as the light reaches them. Faces marked by disease, yes, but also by hope, by the simple joy of being part of something larger than themselves. Sister Catherine is among the first to light her candle. Her hands shake slightly, whether from the cold or from the progression of her illness, you can't tell, but her smile is steady and bright. The flame catches, and she cups her free hand around it protectively, as if sheltering a precious butterfly. Brother Thomas steps forward next, his carved features soft in the candlelight. When his flame springs to life, he holds it high for a moment, letting its light catch the tears that have gathered in his eyes. For all the beautiful things we've made, he whispers, and somehow you know he's thinking not just of his woodwork, but of the lives they've all crafted here in this place apart from the world. The lighting continues, each person adding their small flame to the growing constellation. Margaret, the eldest among them, who has been here longer than anyone can remember. Young brother David, barely 20, whose life was changed by disease before it had truly begun. Sister Anne, whose gentle voice has comforted so many in their darkest hours. When your turn comes, you step forward on trembling legs. The Paschal candle's flame dances before you, warm and welcoming. You touch your candle's wick to it, and suddenly you're holding your own piece of the light, your own small contribution to the miracle unfolding around you. The flame is surprisingly warm against your face, and you understand why fire has always been humanity's symbol for the divine. Once every candle is lit, the procession begins. Brother Benedict leads the way, carrying the Paschal candle high. Behind him, the community follows in a gentle river of light, their candles casting dancing shadows on the stone walls as they move through the corridors of the leper house. The procession is unhurried, contemplative. Voices rise in an ancient chant, the Veni Creator Spiritus, sung in Latin that flows like water over stones. The melody is simple enough that even those who don't know the words can hum along, their voices blending into a harmony that seems to resonate from the very walls. Veni Creator Spiritus, mentes tuum visita. Come, Creator Spirit, visit the minds of your people. The words take on special meaning here, in this place where people have been forgotten by the world, but not, they believe, by God. The procession winds through the entire compound, through the dormitories where simple beds are illuminated by the passing light, through the refectory where tomorrow's feast will be shared, past the herb garden where healing plants sleep under the stars. Each space is transformed by the presence of the lights, made sacred by the community's passage. In the scriptorium, the procession pauses while Brother Matthias displays his illuminated psalm book, its golden letters seeming to glow with their own inner light. The word made visible, he says softly, like the light we carry. Through the kitchen they go, where the scents of tomorrow's feast still linger. Sister Catherine offers a brief prayer of thanksgiving for the food that will nourish their bodies, just as this ceremony nourishes their spirits. The procession even passes through the infirmary, where those too ill to walk watch from their beds. Their faces light up as the candles pass, and several reach out to touch the flames with their fingertips, as if drawing strength from the light itself. Finally, the procession returns to the chapel, where the altar blazes with the light of all the candles now gathered together. The individual flames merge into something greater, a constellation of hope that drives back the darkness more effectively than any single light could manage alone. As the candles are placed in their holders around the altar, voices rise in the final hymn of the evening, the Te Deum, a song of praise that has echoed through Christian communities for more than 1,000 years. But tonight, sung by these forgotten voices in this forgotten place, it carries a special power. Te Deum laudamus, Te Dominum confitemer. We praise you, God, we acknowledge you as Lord. The Latin words flow like honey, sweet and thick with meaning. In the flickering candlelight, faces that are often marked by suffering are transformed into something beautiful. Not despite their afflictions, but because of the grace they've found in learning to live with them. The service concludes with a simple blessing, Brother Benedict's voice carrying over the assembled community. May the light we carry tonight burn in our hearts through all the darkness to come. May we remember that even in exile we are not alone. And may we know that every flame, no matter how small, has the power to illuminate the world. As the formal ceremony ends, something wonderful happens. Instead of immediately extinguishing their candles and returning to their cells, the residents linger. They gather in small groups, sharing stories and quiet laughter. Some continue to hum the evening's hymns. Others simply stand in comfortable silence, watching their candles burn. Brother Thomas finds you in the crowd, his weathered face soft with contentment. Every year, he says quietly, I wonder if this will be the year we don't have enough people for a proper procession. Every year, I'm reminded that it's not about the numbers. It's about the light. Sister Catherine approaches, carrying a small tray of the honey cakes. For strength, she says with a smile, offering one to each of you. The cake is sweet and warm, flavored with cinnamon and marked with a small cross pressed into the dough before baking. As the evening deepens and the candles burn lower, the community gradually disperses. But the light doesn't die. Many residents carry their candles back to their cells, where they'll burn through the night as symbols of the connection they've shared. Tomorrow, they'll return to their individual routines, their separate struggles. But tonight, they've been reminded that they're part of something larger. You remain in the chapel long after most have gone, watching the altar candles burn steadily in their carved holders. The silence is profound, but it's not empty. It's full of the evening's music, the memory of shared light, the knowledge that even in the darkest places, community can bloom. As your own candle burns down to its final inches, you realize you've witnessed something extraordinary. Not a miracle in the supernatural sense, perhaps, but a miracle nonetheless. The transformation of isolation into community, of darkness into light, of exile into a strange kind of home. In the crackling of the dying flames, you hear the echo of voices raised in unison, and you know that some lights, once kindled, burn forever in the heart. A gentle preview of what's to come. Time moves differently within these walls, where winter frost gives way to spring blossoms, where swallows return to nest in ancient eaves, where you'll learn to measure life not in days or years, but in the quiet rhythms of a world that continues to turn, even when the world beyond these walls forgets you exist. Winter arrives early this year, settling over the leper house like a soft gray blanket. From your window in the dormitory, you watch the first snow begin to fall. Tiny crystals that dance and swirl in the lamplight before settling onto the bare branches of the apple trees in the orchard. The flakes are small and dry, the kind that whisper against the glass and accumulate slowly, patiently, without drama or haste. Brother Benedict has ordered extra wood brought in for the fires, and the sweet scent of applewood smoke drifts constantly from the chimneys now. In the refectory, meals have grown heartier. Thick stews made from root vegetables stored in the cellars, bread dense with grain and honey, warm possets flavored with precious spices to ward off the cold that seeps through even the thickest stone walls. You've learned to find beauty in this season of waiting. The bare branches outside your window create delicate traceries against the pale sky, like ink drawings on parchment. Ice forms intricate patterns on the water basins in the morning, Crystals so fine they look like the illuminated borders in Brother Matthias's manuscripts come to life. In the chapel, morning prayers take on a different quality in winter. Breath mists in the cold air, creating small clouds that rise with the words of the Psalms. The candlelight seems warmer, more precious, when surrounded by such cold. Sister Catherine's voice, leading the singing, carries farther in the crisp air, its clarity enhanced by the winter silence that wraps around the leper house like a protective shawl. The days are short now, but somehow they feel fuller. There's more time for contemplation, for the quiet crafts that warm the hands and occupy the mind. In Brother Thomas's workshop, the sound of tools on wood takes on a different rhythm, more deliberate, more meditative. He's carving a new set of prayer beads, each one perfectly round, the wood worn smooth by his patient hands. Winter is a good time for small, careful work, he tells you, holding up a bead to examine it in the lamplight. The cold makes you slow down, pay attention to details. Rush in winter, and you make mistakes. But work with the season's rhythm, and you create something that will last. Sister Anne has taken up embroidery, her needle flashing in and out of heavy linen as she creates altar cloths decorated with vines and flowers. Memories of summer preserved in thread. Her work is so fine it seems impossible that hands affected by her disease could manage such precision. But she explains that the repetitive motion actually helps with the stiffness in her fingers. Each stitch is a prayer, she says, showing you a section where tiny roses bloom across the fabric in shades of red and pink. By the time I finish a piece, I've prayed my way through it dozens of times. The cloth holds those prayers, I think. Makes them part of the beauty. The herb garden sleeps under snow now, but Sister Margaret still tends it, checking the small protective structures she's built over the more delicate plants. She knows which herbs will return in spring and which must be replanted, which seeds to save and which to scatter for the birds. The garden teaches patience, she says, brushing snow from a lavender bush that will bloom again come summer. Everything has its season. Even we do. Winter isn't death. It's just a different kind of life, quieter but no less important. Christmas comes with its own gentle magic. The community gathers in the chapel for midnight mass, the altar blazing with candles and decorated with evergreen boughs that fill the air with the scent of pine and resin. The singing is particularly beautiful that night, voices joining in the ancient carols that have celebrated this holy birth for centuries. Brother Benedict tells the story of the Nativity with special emphasis on the themes that resonate here. The Holy Family finding no room at the inn, the birth taking place in humble circumstances, the way the divine chose to enter the world not in a palace, but in a forgotten corner where only shepherds and animals bore witness. Even exile can be holy ground, he says, his words carrying clearly through the chapel. Even the forgotten places can become the birthplace of miracles. After the service, there's a small feast, nothing elaborate, but special in its own way. Sister Catherine has made small honey cakes shaped like stars, and someone has donated apples and nuts from the village. The refectory glows with candlelight and warm laughter. The sound of voices raised not in prayer, but in the simple joy of shared celebration. Winter deepens, and with it comes a different kind of community life. Evening gatherings become more common, residents clustering around the fires in the common room to share stories, play simple games, or just sit in comfortable companionship. Brother David, despite his youth, proves to be a gifted storyteller, weaving tales of knights and dragons that transport his listeners far from the stone walls that contain their days. Sister Catherine teaches some of the younger residents traditional songs from her childhood, her voice still strong and sweet despite her years. The melodies are simple enough that even those with damaged voices can join in, creating harmonies that rise and fall like the wind outside the windows. You learn to find rhythm in the smallest things, the way ice forms and melts on the windowsills, the pattern of frost on morning grass, the sound of wind in the bare branches. Time moves slowly here, but it's not empty time. It's full of small observations, tiny moments of beauty, the accumulation of days that each hold their own quiet significance. Then, almost imperceptibly, winter begins to loosen its grip. You notice it first in the quality of light, still pale, but lasting a few minutes longer each day. Then comes the sound, a single bird calling from the orchard, joined gradually by others until the dawn chorus returns in full voice. The first crocuses push through the snow in the herb garden, their purple and white blooms brave and determined. Sister Margaret spots them during her morning rounds and calls others to see. their excited voices carrying across the courtyard like the first notes of spring's symphony. "Look," she says, kneeling beside the small flowers despite the dampness of the earth. They remember. Even buried under snow, they remember that their time will come again. Spring arrives not all at once but in layers, each day bringing some small change. Buds swell on the fruit trees. The ice on the well melts, revealing clear water beneath. The herb garden begins to show green shoots pushing through the brown earth. Parsley and chives, the hardy plants that survive winter and return with renewed vigor. Brother Thomas opens his workshop windows for the first time in months, letting in air that carries the promise of warmth. The sound of his tools takes on a lighter rhythm now, and he begins work on outdoor projects. New benches for the garden paths, a small shrine to house Brother Matthias's painted icons where they can be seen by all who pass. The community's morning prayers move outdoors when the weather permits, voices rising in the fresh air while birds sing their own hymns in the budding trees. There's something particularly beautiful about the way human and natural music blend together, creating a symphony of praise that seems to embrace the entire awakening world. As spring deepens into early summer, the transformation is remarkable. The herb garden explodes into green life. Rosemary and sage, lavender and thyme, each plant contributing its own fragrance to the warming air. Bees arrive from somewhere, their humming adding another layer to the garden's music as they work among the flowers. Sister and moves her embroidery outdoors, sitting in the shade of the apple trees while she works. "The light is better here," she says, and she can watch the world wake up while her needle creates new gardens in thread. Her latest project is an altar frontal decorated with all the herbs from Sister Margaret's garden, each one rendered in perfect detail. The orchard blooms in a cascade of pink and white blossoms that seem almost impossibly beautiful after the long winter. Petals drift on the breeze like snow, but warm snow that carries the promise of fruit to come. Under the trees, wildflowers carpet the ground, violets and wild strawberry blossoms, tiny white flowers whose names you don't know but whose beauty needs no identification. Summer arrives with its own gifts. Long days when evening prayers are said in full sunlight. Vegetables growing thick and green in the garden plots. The sound of children's laughter drifting over the walls from the village beyond. A sound that brings both joy and a sharp pang of longing to those who listen. The residents adapt their routines to the season. Morning prayers move earlier to take advantage of the cool air. Afternoon rest becomes essential when the sun beats down on the stone courtyards. Evening meals are often taken outdoors, simple affairs of bread and cheese and vegetables fresh from the garden. Brother Thomas constructs a wooden arbor over one of the garden paths, training grapevines up its sides. It will take years to provide real shade, he admits, but someone should plant for the future, even if we won't see its full beauty ourselves. The seasons teach patience here, and acceptance, and the kind of hope that doesn't depend on immediate gratification. You learn to measure time not in urgent days but in the slow turning of the year, in the reliability of spring following winter, in the knowledge that beauty returns even after it seems to have died completely. As autumn returns, your second autumn in this place, you realize how much you've changed. The desperate urgency that brought you here has settled into something calmer, more sustainable. You've learned to find joy in small things. The first frost flowers on the windows, the taste of apples from the orchard trees, the sound of geese calling overhead as they migrate south. Standing in the herb garden as the leaves begin to turn, you understand something fundamental about the rhythm of this place. The leper house exists outside the frantic pace of the world beyond its walls. Here, time moves at the speed of growing things, of healing wounds, of prayers said daily for years until they become as natural as breathing. The seasons pass, each one teaching its own lessons. Winter's patience, spring's hope, summer's abundance, autumn's acceptance of change. And through it all, the community endures, adapting to each season's gifts and challenges, finding beauty in the eternal cycle of death and rebirth that governs all life. As night falls and you prepare to return to your cell, you pause to listen to the evening sounds. The last birds calling from the orchard, the whisper of wind in the grain, the distant sound of vespers beginning in the chapel. Tomorrow will bring its own small miracles, its own quiet revelations. The seasons will continue their ancient dance, and you will be here to witness it, to be part of it, to learn whatever it has yet to teach you. Outside your window, the stars appear one by one, marking time's passage with the same gentle patience that governs all life within these walls, where seasons teach the deepest truths about endurance, hope, and the beauty that emerges from accepting what cannot. A gentle preview of what's to come. Tonight, Brother Benedict will tell you a story that has traveled across centuries and continents. Of a young king who wore a silver mask to hide his affliction, who ruled a kingdom while bearing the same marks that brought you to this place, and who proved that dignity and grace can flourish even in the shadow of disease. The autumn evening settles around the leper house like a familiar embrace, and you find yourself drawn once again to the common room where a fire crackles warmly in the stone hearth. The residents have gathered as they often do when the day's work is done, some mending clothes by lamplight, others simply enjoying the companionship that makes even the longest evenings bearable. Brother Benedict sits in his usual chair near the fire, a worn leather volume resting closed on his lap. His weathered hands trace the book's cover absently as he gazes into the flames, and you sense that he's preparing to share something special with the small group that has assembled around him. "Tonight," he says, his voice carrying the quiet authority that comes from years of tending to souls in need, "I want to tell you about someone who shared our affliction, but whose story might surprise you. Someone who proved that this disease, terrible as it can be, cannot diminish the nobility of the human spirit." He opens the book carefully, its pages yellow with age, and finds the passage he's looking for. "His name was Baldwin," he begins, "and he was born to be a king." The fire settles with a soft whisper, sending shadows dancing across the stone walls as Brother Benedict's voice takes on the rhythm of a storyteller who has told this tale many times before, each telling polishing it like a stone worn smooth by countless hands. "Baldwin IV of Jerusalem," he continues, "was born in the year of our Lord 1161 in the Holy Land, where Christian knights had carved out kingdoms in the desert. His father was King Amalric, and from birth, Baldwin was destined to rule. He was trained in the arts of war and peace, in languages and law, in all the skills a king must master." Sister Catherine looks up from her sewing, her needle suspended in mid-stitch. "A king with our disease?" she asks softly, wonder in her voice. "Indeed," Brother Benedict nods. "The first signs appeared when he was still a child, perhaps 9 years old. His tutor, William of Tyre, noticed it during a game. The boy was playing with other children, pinching and hitting each other as children do, but young Baldwin felt no pain. His arm had gone numb. The room has grown very quiet now, even the whispered conversations in the corners falling silent as the residents lean forward to hear better. Outside, the wind moves through the bare branches of the orchard, but inside, all attention is focused on the prior's gentle voice. As Baldwin grew older, the signs became unmistakable. The loss of feeling in his extremities, the gradual disfigurement that marked him as one of us. But here is the remarkable thing. Instead of hiding away, instead of abdicating his throne, he chose to rule. He chose to be a king, disease and all. Brother Thomas, who has been whittling a small figure by the firelight, sets down his knife. How could he? Surely the nobles would never accept. "Ah, but they did," Brother Benedict says, his eyes brightening. "Because Baldwin proved that a man's worth is not measured by the wholeness of his flesh, but by the strength of his character. When he came of age and took the throne, he faced the greatest military leader of his time, Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria, who commanded armies that outnumbered the Christian forces many times over." The prior's voice grows stronger as he tells of the young king's first great victory. At the Battle of Montgassard in 1177, Baldwin was just 16 years old. His disease had progressed to the point where he could no longer grip a sword properly, yet he led his knights into battle himself. They were outnumbered 10-1, but Baldwin's courage inspired his men to fight like lions. Sister Anne, who has been working on her embroidery, lets her hands fall still in her lap. "He fought, even with?" "He fought," Brother Benedict confirms. "Not with sword and shield, his hands could no longer manage such weapons. But he rode at the head of his army, his presence alone worth 1,000 men. They say he wore a silver mask to hide the worst of his disfigurement, but his voice rang out clear and strong, calling his knights to victory. The silver mask. You can picture it in your mind, elegant, dignified, hiding the ravages of disease while revealing nothing of the weakness others might expect to find. It becomes, in your imagination, not a symbol of shame but of nobility, a crown of sorts, worn by a king who refused to let his affliction define his reign." "And they won?" asks Brother David, the youngest among them, his eyes wide with fascination. "They won," Brother Benedict says with satisfaction. "Against impossible odds, they scattered Saladin's army and saved the kingdom." But that was not the end of Baldwin's story. For 13 years, he ruled from Jerusalem, managing not just the daily governance of his realm, but the complex web of alliances and conflicts that defined the Crusader states. The prior turns a page in his ancient book, the parchment rustling like autumn leaves. Baldwin was not just a warrior king, you see. He was a diplomat, a scholar, a patron of learning. Despite his disease, or perhaps because of it, he developed a profound understanding of human suffering that made him a just and compassionate ruler. How did he manage the daily requirements of kingship? Sister Margaret asks, her practical mind clearly working through the logistics. The ceremonies, the public appearances? With great dignity, Brother Benedict replies. When his hands became too damaged to sign documents, he used a seal. When his face became too disfigured for public appearances, he received visitors from behind a screen. But his voice remained strong and his mind sharp. He adapted, as we all must, finding new ways to accomplish what needed to be done. The fire pops softly, sending a small shower of sparks up the chimney, and Brother Benedict pauses to stir the coals with an iron poker. When he continues, his voice carries a note of admiration that makes the historical figure seem almost present in the room. Perhaps most remarkably, Baldwin never married, knowing that his disease would likely be passed to his children. Think of the sacrifice that represents. A king who chose to end his own dynasty rather than risk passing on his suffering to future generations. Yet he ruled with such wisdom that his kingdom prospered under his care. You find yourself thinking about the choices Baldwin must have faced daily. The same fundamental questions that confront everyone in this room. How to maintain dignity when your body betrays you. How to contribute meaningfully to the world when the world would prefer to forget you exist. How to find purpose in the midst of progressive limitation and loss. What happened to him in the end? Brother Thomas asks quietly, though his tone suggests he already knows the answer won't be entirely happy. He died young, as most of us do, Brother Benedict says simply. He was only 24 when the disease finally claimed him. But in his short life, he accomplished more than most men do in twice the years. He kept his kingdom safe, maintained the delicate balance that allowed Christians, Muslims, and Jews to coexist in the Holy Land, and proved that neither disease nor disfigurement could diminish the nobility of a truly great soul. The room falls silent as the residents absorb this story. Here was someone who faced the same daily challenges they face, the same physical deterioration, the same social isolation, yet who managed to rule a kingdom and earn the respect of friend and enemy alike. Sister Catherine speaks first, her voice thoughtful. He chose to serve others, even when his own needs were so great. Yes, Brother Benedict agrees. And perhaps that's the most important lesson of King Baldwin's story. He could have retreated from the world, could have spent his remaining years in comfort and isolation. Instead, he chose to give what he could, to use whatever abilities remained to him in service of something greater than himself. Brother David leans forward in his chair. Do you think people remember him? Or do they only remember that he was sick? The prior closes the book gently, his hands resting on its cover. History remembers him as one of the greatest kings of the Crusader states. Not the diseased king, not the leper king. Simply a great king who happened to bear our affliction. His legacy is not his disease, but his deeds. Outside, the wind has picked up, rattling the shutters and sending leaves skittering across the courtyard. But inside, warmed by fire and story, the residents of the leper house sit in contemplative silence, each perhaps imagining how they might follow Baldwin's example in their own smaller sphere. I think, says Sister, and finally, that King Baldwin understood something we sometimes forget. Our disease is something that happens to us, but it's not who we are. He was a king who happened to have leprosy, not a leper who happened to be a king. Brother Benedict smiles, clearly pleased with her insight. Precisely, and that distinction makes all the difference. We are not defined by our limitations, but by how we choose to live within them. As the evening grows later and the fire burns lower, residents begin to drift away to their cells, each carrying with them the image of a young king in a silver mask, ruling with wisdom and dignity despite bearing the same marks that brought them to this place of exile. You remain by the fire long after the others have gone, turning the story over in your mind. Baldwin's life seems to offer a different model for thinking about disease and identity. Not as victim and affliction, but as person and circumstance, with the person remaining primary even as the circumstances grow more challenging. Brother Benedict notices your thoughtful silence. The story troubles you? He asks gently. Not troubles, you say slowly, but it makes me think. Here we are, hidden away from the world, and there was Baldwin, ruling in the center of it. What's the difference between us? The prior considers this for a moment before answering. Perhaps there is no difference in our affliction, only in our circumstances. Baldwin was born to a throne. We were born to more humble stations. But the choices we face are the same. How to live with dignity, how to serve others despite our limitations, how to find meaning in the midst of suffering. He stands slowly, preparing to retire for the night. Remember, my friend, that kingdoms come in many sizes. Baldwin ruled Jerusalem, but you, all of us, rule the kingdom of our own souls. And in that realm, we are all kings and queens, free to choose nobility over bitterness, service over self-pity, grace over despair. As you finally make your way to your own cell, you carry with you the image of Baldwin IV, not as a tragic figure cut down by disease, but as a young man who transformed his suffering into a crown, who proved that dignity and grace can flourish even in the shadow of affliction. His silver mask becomes, in your imagination, not a symbol of shame but of sovereignty, the crown worn by those who refuse to let their circumstances diminish their souls. In the quiet of your cell, you dream of a young king riding to battle, his silver mask catching the desert sun, his voice calling his knights to victory against impossible odds, proving that courage and nobility know no bounds. A gentle preview of what's to come. At the end of the corridor, where morning light filters through stained glass windows, there is a room that holds the final secret of the leper house, where hands are held and final prayers are whispered, where the last threshold is crossed with tenderness and grace, and where you'll discover that even endings can be beautiful. The room is smaller than you expected, tucked away at the end of a quiet corridor that few visitors ever see. Brother Benedict calls it simply the last room, though Sister Catherine prefers the peaceful room, and Brother Thomas, in his practical way, refers to it as the place where souls go home. By any name, it serves the same sacred purpose. It is where the residents of the leper house come to die. You've been here for 3 years now, and this is the first time you've been invited to enter this space. The invitation comes from Sister Margaret, the eldest among the community, whose gentle wisdom has guided so many through their final days. Brother Francis is asking for you, she says simply, her weathered hand resting lightly on your arm. He doesn't have much time left. Brother Francis, you remember him from your first days here, a tall, gentle man who tended the herb garden with such devotion that flowers seemed to bloom more brightly at his touch. His disease had progressed slowly at first, but in recent months, the change has been unmistakable. The gradual withdrawal from daily activities, the increasing frailty, the way his eyes have taken on that distant look of someone already beginning to see beyond the veil of this world. The door to the last room opens with a whisper, and you step into a space that feels immediately different from the rest of the leper house. The walls are painted a soft cream color, and late afternoon sunlight streams through windows of colored glass, simple panels of blue and gold that cast gentle rainbows across the stone floor. The air smells of lavender and beeswax, with an underlying scent of something else. Not the medicinal odors you might expect, but something clean and peaceful, like fresh linen dried in summer air. Brother Francis lies in the room's single bed, his form small beneath a quilt that Sister and has sewn with careful stitches. The pattern is simple but beautiful, interlocking circles in shades of green and brown, like the garden he loved so much. His face, marked by the disease but somehow serene, turns toward you as you enter. "Ah," he says, his voice barely above a whisper but still carrying warmth. "I was hoping you would come." His hands, resting on top of the quilt, are badly affected by the disease, but they move with purpose as he gestures for you to sit in the chair beside his bed. The chair is one of Brother Thomas's creations, you realize, carefully crafted with a high back and cushioned seat, designed for long hours of vigil. How many people have sat in this chair, you wonder, keeping watch over friends and fellow residents as they made their final journey? How many hands has it supported? How many tears has it witnessed? "I wanted to tell you something," Brother Francis continues, his eyes bright despite his weakness. "About the garden. About what I've learned from watching things grow and die and grow again." He pauses, gathering strength for what he wants to say. "When I first came here, I thought my life was over. I thought I was finished, useless, forgotten by God and man." Sister Margaret enters quietly, carrying a small basin of water and a soft cloth. She moves around the room with practiced grace, tending to Brother Francis with the gentle efficiency of someone who has done this many times before. Her presence is calming, unobtrusive. She is simply there, like a steady heartbeat or the quiet rhythm of breathing. But the garden taught me differently, Brother Francis says, his voice growing stronger as he continues. Every year, I watched the herbs die back in winter, their leaves brown and brittle, their stems broken by frost. I mourned them, thinking they were gone forever. But then spring would come, and there they would be again, not the same plants, but new growth from the same roots. The dying wasn't the end of the story. It was just part of the cycle. Brother Benedict appears in the doorway, his presence announced by the soft whisper of his robes. He carries a small wooden box, Brother Thomas's work again. You can tell by the careful joinery and the way the wood has been polished to a warm glow. Inside, are the tools of his office, the holy oils, the small silver cross, the worn prayer book that has seen him through hundreds of these final vigils. I don't think I'm dying, Brother Francis says, his words surprising you. I think I'm just changing, like the herbs in winter, going dormant before the next season begins. He smiles, and despite the ravages of his disease, there's something beautiful in his expression. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm curious. Sister Catherine arrives with a tray of simple refreshments. Not for Brother Francis, who can no longer eat, but for those who are keeping vigil. There's bread and honey, water flavored with mint from the garden, and a small pitcher of wine blessed for the occasion. She sets the tray on a small table by the window, then takes her place in another chair, her rosary beads moving silently through her fingers. Would you like me to read to you? Brother Benedict asks, settling into his own chair and opening his prayer book. The Psalms, perhaps? Or would you prefer something else? The Gospel of John, Brother Francis says without hesitation. The part about the grain of wheat. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains just a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. He turns his head slightly to look at you. I've been thinking about that passage, about what it means to fall to the ground. Brother Benedict finds the passage and begins to read, his voice soft but clear in the quiet room. The familiar words take on new meaning in this context, speaking not just of death and resurrection, but of transformation, of the mysterious alchemy by which endings become beginnings. As the afternoon wears on, others join the vigil. Brother Thomas arrives with a small wooden cross he's carved specially for Brother Francis. Simple but beautiful, with roses climbing up its arms. Sister and brings a small embroidered pillow, its linen case decorated with herbs from the garden. Even Brother David, usually so uncomfortable around death, finds his way to the room and settles quietly in a corner. The conversation flows gently, like a stream over smooth stones. Brother Francis tells stories from his life before the leper house, his childhood in a village far to the north, his apprenticeship with a master gardener, the first time he saw roses bloom in a monastery garden, and knew he wanted to spend his life coaxing beauty from the earth. I thought I was just growing herbs, he says, his voice growing fainter as evening approaches. Simple plants for healing and cooking. But now I understand. I was growing something else too. Hope, maybe. Or faith. Something that can't be seen but can be felt, like the warmth of sun on leaves. The windows have darkened now, and candles have been lit around the room. Not many, just enough to create a gentle glow that doesn't hurt tired eyes. The light flickers softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls, and the room takes on an almost ethereal quality, as if it exists somewhere between the world of the living and whatever lies beyond. Brother Francis's breathing has grown shallower, but he seems peaceful, his face relaxed in a way that suggests the pain of his disease has finally begun to recede. Sister Margaret checks on him periodically, adjusting his pillows, offering sips of water he can no longer swallow, simply being present in the way that only those who have learned to sit with suffering can be. I can see the garden, Brother Francis whispers suddenly, his eyes focused on something beyond the candlelit room. It's spring there. Everything is blooming at once, the lavender and the roses, the herbs and the fruit trees. It's so beautiful. He pauses, a slight smile playing across his lips. And there are people there. People I knew before. They're tending the plants, and they're smiling. Sister Catherine begins to sing. Not a hymn, but a simple lullaby her mother taught her long ago. The melody is sweet and gentle, the kind of song that eases tired souls into sleep. Others join their voices to hers, creating a soft harmony that seems to embrace Brother Francis like a warm blanket. Don't be sad, he says, his voice now barely audible. This isn't an ending. It's just the next season beginning. His eyes find yours one last time. Take care of the herb garden for me. Remember what I taught you about working with the natural rhythms. not against them. And don't forget to talk to the plants. They listen, They always listen. Brother Benedict begins the prayers for the dying, his voice steady and sure as he speaks the ancient words that have comforted the faithful for generations. The Latin flows like water, like music, like the sound of wind through growing things. In paradisum degicant te angeli. May the angels lead you into paradise. As the night deepens, Brother Francis's breathing grows quieter, his face more peaceful. The vigil continues, not with sorrow, but with a strange kind of joy, the joy that comes from witnessing a life well-lived reaching its natural conclusion. There is sadness, yes, but it's the clean sadness of autumn, when leaves fall to nourish the earth for next year's growth. Look, Sister and whispers, pointing toward the window. Outside, the first light of dawn is beginning to show, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day is beginning. Brother Francis draws one last breath, so soft it's almost not there at all, and then he is still. The room falls silent except for the quiet sound of weeping. Not the harsh tears of despair, but the gentle rain of gratitude for a life shared, a journey completed, a soul finally at rest. Sister Margaret closes his eyes gently, her weathered hands tender as a mother's. Peaceful, she says simply. As it should be. Brother Benedict completes the prayers, his voice strong and sure. Eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon him. May he rest in peace. Amen, the gathered community responds, their voices creating one last harmony in the quiet room. As the sun rises fully, casting its golden light through the colored windows, you understand something fundamental about this place, about the people who have made it their home. They have learned to make even dying beautiful, to surround the final moments with love and dignity and grace. They have transformed what the world sees as abandonment into a kind of sacred space where souls can depart in peace. Brother Francis will be buried in the small cemetery behind the chapel, his grave marked with Brother Thomas's wooden cross and tended by the same hands that will continue to care for his beloved herb garden. His body will return to the earth he loved so much, but his spirit, the part of him that found beauty in growing things and taught others to do the same, will continue to bloom in the lives he touched. You remain in the room long after the others have gone, sitting in the chair beside the empty bed, watching the morning light play across the stone floor. The room is quiet now, but it's not empty. It's full of something indefinable, peace, perhaps, or the lingering presence of all the souls who have found their rest here. In a few hours, someone else will need this room, this sacred space where the last threshold is crossed with tenderness and grace. The cycle will continue, as it always has, as it always will. But for now, in the gentle morning light, there is only silence and the deep satisfaction that comes from witnessing a life complete its journey home. The candles burn lower in their holders, their light growing softer as the dawn brightens, carrying with it the promise that some things, love, dignity, the beauty of a well-tended soul, endure beyond the reach of time and disease and death itself. Tonight, we've wandered through the lost corridors of medieval leper colonies, places that time has almost forgotten, but where human hearts once beat with the same hopes and fears as yours. We've walked beside souls who found dignity in exile, who tended gardens with trembling hands, who whispered prayers in candlelit chapels, and who discovered that even in separation, community could bloom like herbs in a cloister garden. These were not just places of sickness, but sanctuaries of quiet endurance, where the rhythm of bells marked not just the hours, but the gentle persistence of life itself. In the soft scrape of the carpenter's tools, in the rustle of parchment letters never sent, in the flicker of candles carried through dark hallways, we've heard the echoes of lives lived with remarkable grace. The medieval world may seem distant now, but the human capacity for compassion, for finding meaning in suffering, for creating beauty even in the shadows, these things remain unchanged across the centuries. As your mind continues to float through time, drifting past those stone walls and wooden gates, past the herb gardens and quiet courtyards, let yourself rest in the knowledge that every soul seeks the same thing, to be remembered with kindness. The bells have grown silent now, the last candle has flickered out, and the stories have found their way to you, here, in this moment of peaceful darkness. But now, your story, too, deserves rest. Let your breathing slow like the turning of old pages. Let your thoughts settle like dust on forgotten altars. Sleep well, dear listener, and may your dreams be filled with the gentle wisdom of those who came before.